10, 9, ignition sequence.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
1, 0, and liftoff.
Mission complete, Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle's earned its place in history and it's come to a final stop.
Appreciate that, Jonathan. Many in Northern America are saying goodbye to the heat, the forest fires, the drought. Many in the South saying goodbye to the winter conditions. It is the equinox at 1449. Many have already experienced this. Days get a little shorter in the Northern Hemisphere and get a little bit longer. Now, we always share pictures of you, like this beautiful picture of fog rising over the vineyards in southern Germany. Today, we are asking you to share with us in a mobile photo challenge a photo in your delightful country. On this day of change, as the seasons change, send us a photo just like you see here. What we want you to do is do it with a mobile phone. No filters, a horizontal image, and you can Twitter it or Instagram at hashtag HelloFall or hashtag HelloSpring. In fact, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put it online for you. We're going to share these with you as well on the air as well. So if you can, give us a beautiful picture. Here it is at CNN, our mobile society, a one-day mobile photo challenge. Now, scientists are thrilled that actually the season has come to an end. This is Arctic sea ice. This is from 2007. It was a record recession of the sea ice. However, that was the record until this year. Take a look at this. We're going to this area of blue is not the extent of typical sea ice. This was the record in 2007. Look how much was lost just in this year, 2012. Now, scientists believe that a lot of this 18% lower capacity of what they had in the sea ice is due to one large storm that they had in August. Take a look at this animation. This is from NASA. The bright colors of red are the strongest winds, warm winds whipping away. You can actually see the recession of the sea ice in this animation. It's unbelievable. So this is something we don't want to see. The good news is it is halted in its recession. And in fact, what we're finding now is that we're going into the new season. Hopefully, it'll start to regain some of that lost ice. Another thing we see in the seasons is the systems pick up. The jet stream drops southward to the northern hemisphere. One area of low pressure, two areas of low pressure. Here comes a third one. This is going to have some gale force winds, 2.5, maybe 5 centimeters of rainfall. In fact, for the most part, last night in parts of the UK, Jonathan, we had a number of sightings of meteors. Most meteors are maybe the grain of sand or an olive. This one, some of them they say could have been the size of Volkswagens, and unfortunately it looks like some Oktoberfest are getting rained on just a little bit. But a welcome change indeed for many locations in the world.
A wet Oktoberfest. Who would have
Yeah,
thought? Tom Sater, thanks very much.
Now, a 12-year-old boy is being called the luckiest dude in the world. He got his wish, getting his first kiss, but who he got to kiss and how is firing up the internet. Jeannie Mose has more.
How does a 12-year-old manage to get a country music star to give him his very first kiss ever? Sign language from the front row.
He says, "Carrie, be my first kiss." What do you say? We make that happen.
Next thing you know, Carrie Underwood was holding Chase Koenig's hand on stage at this Louisville, Kentucky concert. But even before he came up, he had an inkling she'd noticed him.
She saw me and she winked at me.
How old are you? 12 years old. He's got the jump on me. I was 14 when I had my very first kiss.
Just between us, was this really the first time you kissed a girl?
Yes, this was my first kiss.
But how?
How are we going to do this? Lip to lip.
Chase cuts to the chase. This being his first kiss, Chase needed a little instruction.
Here we go. Close your eyes. Close your eyes.
A first kiss never, ever to be forgotten, especially since it was captured on YouTube from so many angles. Well, what did you learn?
I learned to close my eyes and to determination.
He later exchanged tweets with Carrie Underwood, hashtag lip to lip. His friends called him the luckiest dude in the world. So not fair that you got to kiss her. How was it?
It was just amazing. Words can't describe.
The words on his sign were outlined by his dad. Chase colored them in. The Koenig family needed a fun distraction. Right before Memorial Day, they got burned out of their house when lightning struck. Now, a spark of a different kind. Carrie gave Chase a taste few other men have had, let alone 12-year-old boys.
I learned something else, too.
What's that?
She wears cherry lip balm.
Carried away by Underwood. And no matter how many country music awards she kisses, she'll never forget his first. Are you never going to wash your lips again or brush your teeth?
Well, I brush my teeth, but not my lips.
Not after they've been brushed by hers. Ginny Mo, CNN. New York.
He's a winner. Now, time now to go over and out there, way out there. Now, this is the most detailed view of our universe ever. NASA calls it the extreme deep field. And this image, it took some 10 years to make. Astronomers, they assembled it using photographs taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. And it shows us galaxies up to 13.2 billion light years away, which means it has taken that long for their light to reach Earth. So this picture, it also provides a look back into time.
Basically, our whole solar system was being started to be built up in this time. So it was a time when we were seeing the elements form, when the universe was being transformed, the first galaxies were being built up. So a dramatic time in the period in the life of the universe.
Now, this image, it contains about 5,500 galaxies, but that's just a small sliver of the sky. Now, here is how the area looks compared to our moon, and it really just makes you visualize that we are truly just a tiny speck in a huge universe. Now, from deep space to the deep beneath the waves, Google has unveiled the underwater equivalent of its Street View maps. Let's bring it up and take a look at it. Now, scientists, they teamed up with Google to take this, a virtual snapshot of the Great Barrier Reef. And these are the very first underwater panoramic images available on Google Maps. The clarity is pretty amazing there. You could check out the ocean floor, essentially, without ever getting wet. And that is Newsstream. But the news continues at CNN. World Business Today is next.
Ob uns diese Wärmepumpe auch in Zukunft verlässlich versorgt, das untersuchen seit 2007 Wissenschaftler aus 9 europäischen Ländern. Und das Ergebnis lässt hoffen, zumindest für das kommende Jahrzehnt.
Wenn man wissen will, wie der Golfstrom wirkt, dann ist man im Tystfjord hoch oben in Norwegen richtig. Luft -11, Wasser +4, Nebel. Eigentlich wäre hier Dauerfrost, stattdessen offenes Wasser das ganze Jahr. Ein Grund für die Schwertwale, hier oben ihr Winterlager abzuhalten. Der Golfstrom wird die Heizung Europas genannt. Ein konstanter Strom warmen Wassers, der vom Golf von Mexiko nach Europa zieht. Neue Studien zeigen, dass er sich gut behauptet, allem Klimawandel zum Trotz.
Die zeigen, dass das System stabil bleibt und dass wir eine relativ schwache Erwärmung hier in Nordeuropa bzw. im Nordatlantik haben werden. Das heißt also, in den nächsten 10 Jahren wird also keine Katastrophe passieren.
Das ist eine kleine Sensation. Und eine Reaktion auf eine Fehlwarnung von vor 7 Jahren, als schon eine neue Kaltzeit prophezeit wurde. Damals hatte man im großen Ozean nur an ein paar wenigen Stellen gemessen.
Das Problem ist, dass wir nur 4 oder 5 Messungen hatten an verschiedenen Punkten, auch in der Jahreszeit, und dadurch ein Trend vorgespiegelt wurde, der aber eigentlich nur Teil einer Variation ist.
In den letzten 5 Jahren haben Ozeanologen aus aller Welt rund 3000 Messstationen im Nordmeer ausgelegt. Sie bilden die Basis für eine genauere Prognose. Demnach ist der Golfstrom zwar wärmer geworden, aber nicht schwächer.
Vielleicht erinnern Sie sich, in The Day After Tomorrow versank die ganze Welt in Eis und Schnee. Wir können Sie aber beruhigen. Die Klimaforscher haben akribisch Daten gesammelt und geben Entwarnung.
schmelzende Polkappen und versiegender Golfstrom. Manche Studien konstruierten daraus in der Vergangenheit ein Horrorszenario. Doch neueste Daten widerlegen einen solchen zwangsläufigen Zusammenhang. 4 Jahre lang haben Wissenschaftler mithilfe tausender Messstationen die Meereszirkulation des Golfstroms genau unter die Lupe genommen. Gezielte Messungen mit einem überraschenden Ergebnis.
Wir messen ja diese Transporte an Schlüsselregionen, also da, wo tatsächlich jetzt der Austausch stattfindet zwischen Arktis und dem Nordatlantik. Und da war sehr zu unserer Überraschung diese Zirkulation sehr stabil.
Eine kleine Sensation. Die Meereszirkulation des Atlantik ist ein komplexes System, bei dem warmes Wasser aus dem Golf von Mexiko nach Norden gepumpt wird. Nicht umsonst wird der Golfstrom auch die Heizung Europas genannt. Der warme Strom lässt in unseren Breiten ein gemäßigtes Klima entstehen. Wie der Golfstrom wirkt, kann man hier am Tystfjord in Norwegen hautnah erleben. Luft -11, Wasser +4 Grad und Nebel. Eigentlich müsste es Dauerfrost geben, doch weit gefehlt. Weil es vergleichsweise kuschelig ist, haben Schwertwale hier ihr eisfreies Winterquartier. Doch in der jüngsten Vergangenheit gab es Hinweise, dass die Heizung für diesen Teil des Ozeans schwächelt. Dass die neuen Daten des Forschungsprojektes jetzt Entwarnung geben, erklären die Wissenschaftler so.
Das Problem ist, dass wir nur 4 oder 5 Messungen hatten an verschiedenen Punkten, auch in der Jahreszeit, und dadurch ein Trend vorgespiegelt wurde, der aber eigentlich nur Teil einer Variation ist.
Denn sicher ist inzwischen, der Golfstrom verändert sich ständig. Nicht zuletzt deswegen sind auch nur kurzfristige Vorhersagen mit den jetzigen Messmethoden möglich. Aus diesem Grund wagen die Forscher auch nur Prognosen über einen Zeitraum von 10 Jahren.
Die zeigen, dass das System stabil bleibt und dass wir eine relativ schwache Erwärmung hier in Nordeuropa bzw. im Nordatlantik haben werden. Das heißt also, in den nächsten 10 Jahren wird also keine Katastrophe passieren.
An der globalen Klimaerwärmung ändert das jedoch fast nichts, so die Forscher. Spätestens, wenn in der zweiten Hälfte des Jahrhunderts die menschgemachte Klimaerwärmung mit der nächsten warmen Klimaphase zusammentrifft, dürfte es für den Golfstrom und damit auch für das Weltklima nochmal richtig spannend werden.
This is Mission Control Houston. The Expedition 33 crew members on board the International Space Station kicked off the week focusing on upcoming visiting vehicle operations. Flight engineer Aki Hoshide first off activated the re-entry breakup recorder and installed it in the automated transfer vehicle number 3. During the ATV's descent through the atmosphere after its undocking on Thursday afternoon, the Reaper records data during that re-entry, records temperature and acceleration, rotational rates, and more. All of that to be transmitted and then studied to help design future spacecrafts that pose less of a hazard during re-entry. Hoshide then joined flight engineer Yuri Malenchenko for some ATV undocking training before they both went to work closing the hatches between ATV and the station. The leak checks will be conducted through the night in advance of the scheduled undocking of ATV on Tuesday afternoon at 5:35 p.m. Houston time. Hoshide also worked with Commander Sonny Williams on Monday, training for next month's arrival of the Dragon spacecraft, the commercial cargo ship that's targeted for its first operational flight to the International Space Station in early October. The Dragon now targeted to launch on October the 7th and dock to the space station on October the 10th. Crew members did some computer-based training using the Canadarm2 to grapple Dragon when it approaches the station and then berth it to the Harmony node, just as was done during the first Dragon visit to the station during its demonstration flight back in May. Williams spent time during her afternoon on maintenance in the Tranquility module. She's replacing air selector valves in the carbon dioxide removal assembly. That's a key component of the station's regenerative life support system. The Seadra and other elements of that system maintain a healthful environment on board for the station crew members to live and to do their work. On Tuesday, the crew members will do maintenance and focus on gathering data for experiments into how the microgravity environment impacts the human body. And they will also have a midday nap built into their schedule. That's because they will be up later than usual on Tuesday afternoon to support the undocking of the ATV at 5:35 p.m. Central Time. NASA TV coverage of the departure of the European Space Agency's Eduardo Amaldi cargo vehicle begins Tuesday afternoon at 5:15 Central Time. The ATV, in the same way as the Progress ship and the Japanese H-2 transfer vehicle, the automated transfer vehicle will be commanded to a destructive entry into the atmosphere, and the surviving pieces will fall harmlessly into the ocean. It is used as a trash disposal vehicle when its cargo delivery work is complete. Now, NASA TV viewers have heard us use those words many times in discussing the disposition of cargo vehicles, talking about a destructive entry over the ocean. Well, it turns out that simply disposing of a vehicle in this way isn't always good enough. Knowing how one of these vehicles breaks apart while it plunges through the atmosphere is of value too. And the space station's science program has an investigation that's designed to learn more about that. It's called the Re-Entry Breakup Recorder, and Aki Hoshide activated and installed the Reber hardware in ATV-3 this morning for the ride back down after the undocking coming up tomorrow afternoon. The principal investigator for the Re-Entry Breakup Recorder is Dr. William Ayler, and he joins us this morning from his office at the Aerospace Corporation in El Segundo, California, to talk about it. Dr. Ayler, tell me when and how you got interested in the question of finding out how things break apart when they're coming in through the atmosphere.
Certainly. Good morning. I joined the company back in 1974, and shortly thereafter we had the Cosmos 954 reentry that left some debris in Canada. And then sometime after that, again, we had Skylab that came down, and that also, there was concern with things breaking up in the atmosphere. So I got interested during that period and have sort of followed this particular topic for a long time.
It's maybe too simple a question to ask why it matters. I think it certainly matters if this debris is falling on my house as it entered, but is there value in general of knowing how a spacecraft is destroyed?
Yes, indeed. Basically, we have a number of large object reentries that come in. These objects come in randomly every year, and these objects that come in randomly can be large enough to cause, hazards on the ground, and the so that was one reason we want to know why things break up, is to know how to assess that hazard. And assessing the hazard is interesting these days, because one of the ways for removing space debris from orbit, or removing it as a concern, is to re-enter it into the atmosphere. And there are basically two ways to re-enter things. One is to do it like we're doing with the ATV-3, which is directed into the ocean, but that can be expensive for somebody who's operating a spacecraft. So if we can lower the hazard sufficiently for these large objects, they could be allowed to re-enter randomly, and that reduces the cost substantially for spacecraft operators.
Generally speaking, how large does an item have to be in order to survive all the way to the ground?
Well, basically, the way we assess this is experience tells us that anywhere from 10 to 40% of an object's dry mass on orbit will survive to hit the ground. So that means that you have to have an object of sufficient size that has big enough surviving fragments to be a hazard. I would say the general rule of thumb is anything that weighs more than about 800 kilograms is probably something that we would be concerned about.
And some pieces have survived. Does studying them tell you anything about how the spacecraft disintegrated?
It does indeed. As a matter of fact, we have a program working with our local Air Force to bring back surviving things that are found on the ground that have survived reentry, and we do a metallurgical analysis on those to try to understand how hot they got, and we compare those results to what our models predict.
So you can learn some things, but I take it not as much as you'd like to know.
That's exactly right. Basically, what we'd like to know is, what altitude do things come apart? How much? What is the heating? There's some evidence that the models, at least prior to this time, have been over-predicting the heating at high altitudes, which means that you would predict that less survives than actually does. And so, one of our objectives with this reentry breakup recorder is to get some definitive data on how objects respond as they re-enter the atmosphere.
Okay, let's talk about the hardware. Can you describe the REBER, Re-Entry Breakup Recorder?
Sure. Basically, REBER is it's about a foot in diameter, about 9 inches tall. It weighs about 4 kilograms or about 9 pounds. And the way to think of it, it's basically a cell phone with a heat shield and its own little instrument suite. So basically, the way REBER works is it sits inside the host vehicle. It's in a copper shell. As the host vehicle re-enters, the aerodynamic heating will break apart the host vehicle, expose the copper shell to heating. When that copper shell gets hot, there's some plastic bolts that melt away, and it releases our little device, the reentry recorder, which through the reentry process records things like accelerations and rates and attitude rates, temperatures, pressures, those types of things. And so when we get released, and after we're free flying, around 60,000 feet or so, we're basically falling straight down, and at that time we make a phone call on the Iridium system and dump our data.
And when you say released, your thing turns into a satellite and is left flying on its own because the vehicle it was in has destroyed itself around it.
That's correct, exactly. Yes, we're buried inside in that trash pile you described. Not quite like that. We're actually strapped up near the hatch. But as the vehicle breaks apart, we basically count on the fact that everything inside is going to be released due to the aerodynamic heating as the outside structure is melted away, and then of course then we get released, as you say, and we fly separately.
You're thrown clear of the wreckage.
Thrown clear, exactly.
And the data is delivered how?
It's a Iridium call. It's a call on the Iridium system. It's basically satellite telephone, basically, and we make a phone call. It goes up through the satellite, comes down to a web page that we can access from our desk. Does the
REBER itself survive?
REBER does. As it turns out, we didn't design it to survive impact, but in the last several reentries, it's actually landed in the water in the South Pacific, and it's continued to broadcast for a number of hours. Those can be expensive telephone calls.
You haven't recovered one?
No, they're not really designed for recovery, and where they come down right now is in a very remote location. But we do have information on the back of contact information, so if somebody finds one on a beach or something, they can tell us.
You say that they've come to, how many have you flown so far?
We've flown 3. We flew one on HTV-2. That was successful. That was our first one. We flew one on ATV-2. That was not successful. And so we flew one on HTV-3 just recently this month. It came in earlier this month. Worked beautifully, and we're hoping the one on ATV-3 will be successful.
You simply didn't get the data from the last ATV, or?
That's correct. We simply didn't, and we have a number of theories as to why that might be. We were located near the propulsion system on that one. Previous reentries of that particular one had a fairly violent breakup, including an explosion that could have damaged our systems. We did a lot of testing this time to make sure that we're rugged, to look for any faults. We did fix a few little things that could have caused trouble too, so we think these are much more robust this time, and we're hoping for success.
What have you learned from the 2 sets of data that you did get?
Well, we got very good information on the attitude during the breakup process, how the spacecraft itself responded. We have good information now on the breakup altitude, which has always been something that's of great interest because the breakup altitude, in a sense, defines the ground footprint, which is where all the debris will land. Again, that's another important factor. And we basically watched, so we're able to detect a few events as we were coming in. One of the problems with our current device, or limitations I should say, is that it really has its own internal sensors. We're working on a device now which would record data from a number of small wireless sensors that would be placed in various locations in the host vehicle. That will really provide superb data for doing the type of work we do.
and with an eye toward applying this to future spacecraft or better designs of existing ones?
Indeed, yes, exactly right. We basically would be able to do something called design for demise, which it means that you could design a spacecraft with features in it so that it would come apart in controlled ways, hopefully limiting the hazard on the ground. And you would have some confidence in those designs because you can have a nice way of testing those. As a matter of fact, one of the potential uses for these types of devices is as a black box for commercial space transportation systems, so that you can record what happens in case there's an accident. You can also use these devices for testing heat shield materials, which in fact we have sensors in our heat shields on this one, and they provide some very nice data on the temperature distributions in the heat shield.
You have one that's flying, as it were, tomorrow. Are there more in line?
Yes. Well, let's see. We have an internal research project on this wireless version I was talking about, and we're trying to find the funding to build and fly those. There's a lot of interest in flying them, but we need to build a few. So hopefully we'll be able to get some funding to do that.
And but everything is now set for this one to come down with the ATV tomorrow.
Yes, indeed. We're all set. I think it'll be very nice. I believe it's Wednesday night, though. But yes, we are looking forward to that particular reentry, and it'll be quite exciting, I hope.
The third ATV was launched from French Guiana last March on top of an Ariane 5. It's named Edoardo Amaldi, after the famous Italian physicist. ATV, which stands for Automated Transfer Vehicle, is the most complex spacecraft that Europe has ever produced. Its mission is primarily to serve as a fully automated unmanned cargo vessel. After more than 8 months as an integral part of the International Space Station, ATV-3 is now approaching the end of its working life in orbit. ESA's ATVs are designed to carry propellants, gases, water and equipment to the ISS, as well as removing waste generated by the onboard crew. Since development of the first ATV, which was launched in 2008, prime contractor EADS Astrium has been working relentlessly to refine and build these huge space freighters from its base in Bremen, Germany.
You have to imagine that an ATV stays about 6 months in orbit, and already during the 6 months you are doing a stepwise evaluation of that flight. And the results from this flight evaluation have to be directly implemented in the next unit, which is already integrated on ground. So when we have finished the post-flight evaluation, there is only 1 month remaining before we ship the next one.
Laden with almost 7 tons of supplies, ATV-3 tipped the scales at 20 tons, and at the time of its launch, was the world's largest operational spacecraft. After a flawless liftoff, ATV-3 propelled itself autonomously towards the International Space Station, under the watchful eye of ESA's ATV Control Center in Toulouse, France.
We spend 4 to 10 days phasing our orbit with the International Space Station. So we adjust the altitude of the ATV to bring it eventually to a point behind and below the ISS, ready for the rendezvous attempt.
When ATV-3 was in the correct position, it began the automatic docking procedure that would attach it to the Russian Zvezda module. ESA astronaut Andrei Kuipers, who was undergoing a 6-month stay in orbit, oversaw the process from on board the space station. Having had intensive simulator training, he was ready to take the controls should anything go wrong.
We have to react in a short period and have to monitor a lot of different things to see if the ATV is approaching in the right way, because we have to, of course, protect both the ATV and the station, that nothing happens.
And then capture. There we are. Captured.
Once it was safely docked and pressurized, the onboard crew had to clean and test the air inside ATV-3 before unloading procedures could begin. As well as food and clothing, The equipment stored on its 8 racks included experiments destined for use in ESA's Columbus laboratory. Air and oxygen carried by ATV-3 has now been used to regulate the astronauts' living environment. Propellants and drinking water have been transferred to the station's tanks. And the extra 45 cubic meters of living and working space provided by ATV-3 has been a much appreciated luxury for the onboard crew. Using its thrusters and under the control of ISS software, another function of the ATV has been to give regular reboosts to the station, correcting its altitude and velocity, and providing a mechanism for avoiding collisions with space debris. In preparation for its departure from the station, the ATV will soon be filled with waste before closing and testing its hatch and that of the Russian Zvezda module. Following the undocking procedure, it'll orbit the Earth several times before burning up in the atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. ESA is contracted to provide a total of 5 ATVs to the International Space Station project. ATV-4 is already in Kourou and due for launch in spring 2013. By demonstrating expertise in automated docking technologies, these spacecraft will leave a valuable legacy to Europe's spaceflight industry, with plans for related applications already on the horizon.
This is Mission Control Houston. The Tuesday schedule for the Expedition 33 crew on board the International Space Station is centered around preparations for the undocking of the automated transfer vehicle from the station. That undocking is going to occur at 5:36 p.m. Houston time this afternoon. On Monday afternoon, after everything that was being disposed of was packed up and secured inside the Eduardo Amaldi, flight engineers Yuri Malenchenko and Aki Hoshide closed the hatches between that vehicle and the Zvezda module and conducted leak checks then before all of the crew members went to bed. On Tuesday morning, Hoshide completed stowing the tools that they had used to complete the sealing up of the ATV, and then all 3 of the crew members had a shortened morning schedule of tasks. For Station Commander Sonny Williams, it was setting up an ultrasound to use in conjunction with the integrated cardiovascular experiment. That's an investigation in which an echocardiogram of the crew member is done both before and after they exercise. The investigation is trying to quantify the atrophy of the heart muscle that's associated with long-duration spaceflight. Flight engineer Aki Hoshide assisted Williams with that and spent the rest of his morning, the early part of the day, exchanging samples in the NanoStep experiment, while their crewmate, Yuri Malenchenko, had the early part of his day devoted to routine maintenance tasks in the Russian segment of the station. He also got in the first of his 2 daily exercise sessions. That was a run on the treadmill that's located in the Zvezda module. Williams conducted 2 in-flight interviews with the Huffington Post and CBS Radio, and then all 3 of the crew members were scheduled for a nap until 12 noon Central Time. They are even, cleverly enough, scheduled for a small snack period, a half an hour after the nap is over. The crew members will then move to an afternoon in which Williams will replace a recycle tank in the water recovery system, while Malenchenko and Hoshide get everything ready for the crew to monitor the departure of the ATV. NASA TV coverage of the departure starts at 5:15, with the Eduardo Amaldi leaving the International Space Station at 5:36 p.m. Central Time. This is Mission Control Houston. Wednesday, a short work day in space for the Expedition 33 crew on board the International Space Station. That was following up a longer than usual day on Tuesday for Commander Sonny Williams, Flight Engineer Yuri Malenchenko, and Flight Engineer Aki Hoshide, as they were supporting the planned departure of one of the station's cargo vehicles. The planned undocking of the automated transfer vehicle that was aborted on Tuesday afternoon due to a failure of communications between the Russian Zvezda module and the ATV itself. The mission control team in Moscow has understood what caused that error and are prepared to support another undocking attempt of the ATV as soon as a determination is made about when that will happen. In the meantime, flight control teams here in Houston have also been tracking a piece of Russian Cosmos satellite debris that is currently considered a possible conjunction with the International Space Station at about 9:42 Central Time on Thursday morning. The flight teams in Houston have been given instruction to begin planning for a possible debris avoidance maneuver, which would take place early Thursday morning at approximately 7:12 Houston time. And the undocking of the ATV, another attempt at undocking the ATV, would not be made until Friday at the earliest. For the crew members themselves, they had an abbreviated day. They were allowed to sleep in since they were up late on Tuesday. Flight Commander Sunny Williams spent part of her day pre-packing items for return on board the Dragon spacecraft, the commercial cargo vehicle that's targeted for its first operational mission to the space station next month. She also spent time inspecting portable fire extinguishers and breathing apparatus, and wrapped up the day stowing materials from Monday's maintenance work when she replaced some valves in the carbon dioxide removal system. Yuri Malenchenko spent his morning working with a Russian experiment called Pneumocard. That's an investigation of the factors that cause changes in blood circulation, heart function, and respiration on orbit. He also took note of all of the crew's activities for Russian experiments on crew interactions, as well as took care of regular maintenance in the Russian segment of the space station. For flight engineer Aki Hoshide, he started off his day setting up hardware for operations with the Sprint VO2 Max investigation, which is actually a combination of two experiments. Sprint is looking at how high-intensity exercise can help minimize bone and muscle loss for the crew members. The VO2 Max measures the changes in the crew members' oxygen uptake. Hoshide also started the depressurization of the airlock in the Kibo module for planned operations with the Small Satellite Orbital Deployer, which will test a new system for deploying a series of small satellites from the external facility of the Kibo module with the help of the Japanese robotic arm. The Small Satellite Orbital Deployer operations are probably going to be postponed. They will fall victim to the current planning that is underway for a possible debris avoidance maneuver. A decision made on whether or not that debris avoidance maneuver will be conducted is expected late in the day on Wednesday.
Gemütlich ist es nicht in der Zukunft. Die Erde ist wegen Überfüllung geschlossen und die meisten Menschen müssen sich ein anderes Zuhause suchen. Irgendwo im kalten Raum.
Leviathan erwacht. Wann genau, weiß man nicht. Auf jeden Fall spielt James Correys Roman in einer Zukunft, in der die Asteroiden und Planeten unseres Sonnensystems deutlich leichter erreichbar sind als heute.
Auch Detective Miller hat es, wie Millionen andere, auf einen Asteroiden verschlagen. Er ist auf der Suche nach Julia. Miller weiß nicht viel. Er findet ein altes Foto. Das ist alles, was er hat. Doch er ist besessen von dem Bild und von dem Mädchen. Ein Mädchen aus gutem Hause, das sich vielleicht der Rohstoffguerilla angeschlossen hat. Rohstoffe sind rar da draußen in Millers Welt.
Das Leben an den Rändern des Sonnensystems ist viel fragiler als das auf der Erde. Und natürlich können sich die Menschen der Zukunft unseren schlampigen Umgang mit Rohstoffen nicht erlauben.
500.000 Asteroiden schwirren durch den Gürtel. Auf ihnen schürfen die Menschen der Zukunft nach kostbaren Metallen und seltenen Erden. Eine Goldgrube.
Dass die Erde irgendwann ausgebrannt ist, das klingt durchaus real. Aber Rohstoffe von Asteroiden, das klingt dann doch nach Science Fiction.
Auf alle Fälle fragen wir nach. Bei der Europäischen Raumfahrtbehörde. Die muss es ja wissen.
Ja, oder
einer weiß über Asteroiden besonders gut Bescheid. Detlef Koschny. Rohstoffe? Ja, sagt er, aber nicht für die Erde.
Was in dem Buch aber auch erwähnt wird, ist, dass die Rohstoffe hauptsächlich im Asteroidengürtel selber verwendet werden. Also die werden gar nicht zur Erde gebracht. Und da spart man sich die Energie, die man braucht, um das auf die Erde runterzubringen. Das ist zwar heutzutage auch noch Science Fiction, aber das macht tatsächlich Sinn.
Und alle, die es können, sind schon jetzt interessiert an den rohstoffreichen Brocken. Auch Detlef Koschny. Deswegen arbeitet er an der Mission Marco Polo. Eben mit dem Ziel, Rohstoffe von Asteroiden. In bescheidenem Umfang allerdings.
Und da wollen wir zu dem Asteroiden hinfliegen, dort eine Probe entnehmen und die zur Erde zurückbringen. Das wird für wissenschaftliche Zwecke gemacht und ich bringe da nicht Tonnen zurück, wie ich jetzt für eine Ausnutzung von Rohstoffen bräuchte, sondern wir zielen darauf, 100 Gramm Probe zurückzuführen, um die dann wissenschaftlich auf der Erde zu untersuchen.
500 Millionen Euro soll die Mission kosten. Derzeit grübeln Techniker und Wissenschaftler, wie sie die komplizierte Operation Marco Polo am besten bewältigen können. Eine Kamera fürs Einparken des Satelliten gibt es schon. Und ein Modell, das etwas weniger gekostet haben dürfte, gibt es auch.
Dann haben wir natürlich Sonnenzellen, wir haben eine Antenne, mit der wir zur Erde funken. Und die Idee ist, dass wir mit einem Probenentnahmemechanismus so auf den Asteroiden runtergehen, der hier wie so eine Kartoffel ausschaut. Dann nehmen wir eine Probe, dann fliegen wir gleich wieder weg und bringen die Probe zurück in diese kleine Kapsel hier, die dann zur Erde zurückfliegt. Und deswegen haben die
Niemand weiß, was man auf den Asteroiden alles finden kann. Kartoffeln sicher nicht, aber eben fast alles andere. Gold, Eisen, Kobalt.
Sind ausgelegt für bis zu 55 Grad, aber mehr nicht.
Im Roman findet Miller heraus, dass Julia sich auf einem Asteroiden versteckt hält, der als Forschungsstation dient. Hier wird mit extraterrestrischem Genmaterial gearbeitet.
Miller findet Julia scheinbar tot, aber in Wirklichkeit nur genetisch verändert.
Julia ist dank extraterrestrischer DNA entkörpert, sonst aber gesund und munter. Die Erdbewohner allerdings fürchten sich vor ihrem Asteroiden, der entfesselt durch das Sonnensystem saust.
Julias Asteroid wird zu einem Raumschiff, sogar zu einem, das sich perfekt steuern lässt. Das ist dann wohl wirklich Science Fiction, aber wer weiß.
Gelenkte Asteroiden könnten in der Zukunft tatsächlich eine primitive, aber äußerst gefährliche Waffe werden. Die Gefahr ist dem ESA-Mann Detlef Koschny bewusst. Und der Politik.
Das wird diskutiert. Wir haben bei den United Nations eine Arbeitsgruppe oder Action-Team nennt sich das, wo man über das Thema spricht, wie was kann man tun, wenn Asteroiden die Erde bedrohen. Und da fragen wir uns auch, wenn jetzt einer so einen Asteroiden ablenkt, dann muss man sich so vorstellen, wenn der auf der Erde irgendwo einschlägt, dann kann man den in die eine oder in die andere Richtung ablenken. Und wer entscheidet denn, in welche Richtung das geht? Also man könnte sich in der Tat vorstellen, dass man den dann irgendwo hinlegt, wo man gerne jemanden anderen damit bedrohen will.
Privat fühlt Koschny sich durchaus sicher. Kein Wunder. Auch von seinem Garten aus kann er das Treiben der Asteroiden im Blick behalten, was ihn nicht nur aus physikalischer Sicht beeindruckt.
Wenn ich nachts selber hinterm Fernrohr sitze, das ist so ein bisschen so ein spirituelles Erlebnis. Also
mit dem 4,5 Meter Teleskop hat Koschny zwar schon jede Menge Asteroiden gesehen, aber keinen, der Richtung Erde stürzt. Schon gar nicht mit Absicht. Gott sei Dank. Selbst ein Brocken, der nur ein paar Kilometer dick wäre, hätte verheerende Folgen. Und einen Asteroiden etwa mit Raketen in seiner Bahn zu beeinflussen, ist durchaus möglich. Und juristisch weniger problematisch als Falschparken.
Das wird jetzt gerade erst diskutiert. Das heißt, wenn Sie als Privatmann, wenn Sie jetzt super reich wären und sagen, ich lenke da so einen Asteroiden ab zum Spaß, meine ich, dass da keiner im Moment wirklich was dagegen sagen könnte.
Auch gegen den Julia-Asteroiden kann am Ende niemand etwas sagen, denn Miller überzeugt die Menschen, dass der Asteroid keine Waffe ist, sondern eher eine Art spirituelles Forschungsschiff, das fremde Intelligenzen programmiert haben.
Julia ist eins geworden mit dem Asteroiden und Miller folgt ihr. Er verschmilzt mit der Raumstation und mit Julia.
Tja, und auf diese Weise reisen die beiden dann vermutlich bis in alle Ewigkeit glücklich quer durchs Universum.
This is Mission Control, Houston. The Expedition 33 crew on board the International Space Station has been focused on science and maintenance as they look forward to an upcoming undocking of a European cargo ship after the decision was made that the space station did not need to dodge any space debris. Ground teams here in the International Space Station control room in Houston have been tracking a piece of Russian Cosmos satellite that was thought to pass too close to the station on Thursday morning, as well as a piece of exploded Indian rocket body that was on course to pass too close on Friday morning. They had been planning for a debris avoidance maneuver. But additional tracking data received Wednesday and on into Thursday morning gave confidence that neither of those objects presented a concern for a conjunction, and hence no maneuver was conducted. Russian teams are planning for another attempt to undock the European Automated Transfer Vehicle, which is located at the aft end of the International Space Station. Mission managers are meeting to decide when they would like to make another attempt to undock the ATV. The earliest opportunity is Friday afternoon. The Tuesday undocking attempt was aborted just minutes before the undocking when a command to the hooks to open in the ATV did not go through. If the decision is made to try to undock on Friday afternoon, that undocking would happen at 4:46 p.m. Houston time, with NASA TV coverage of the event to begin at 4:30. On Thursday morning, Station Commander Sonny Williams worked on human life sciences investigations, taking measurements for the VO2 max experiment, which is a gauge of an astronaut's maximum oxygen uptake on orbit, combined with the European investigation known as Thermolab, which is studying changes in a body's core temperature before, during, and after exercise as a way to measure adaptation to the space environment. Flight engineer Yuri Malenchenko devoted the early portion of his day to cleaning ventilation system components in the Zvezda module, while Aki Hoshide did maintenance on air sampling equipment in Kibo and on the advanced resistive exercise device in the station's Node 3. In the afternoon, Malenchenko moved on to transfers into and out of the Russian Progress vehicle, while Williams and Hoshide spent time training for their rendezvous and capture of the Dragon spacecraft, the commercial cargo vehicle that's targeted to launch to the space station on October the 7th and arrive on October the 10th. They conducted computer-based training of how they will use the station's robotic arm to grapple the Dragon spacecraft when it nears the station, and then use the arm to attach it to the International Space Station's node number 2. Crew members are also looking ahead to a planned routine emergency evacuation drill to take place on Friday morning before they would be monitoring a potential undocking of the ATV late on Friday afternoon.
Greetings, everybody, wherever you may be, and welcome once again to French Guiana, the home of the Ariane family, for today's launch of Ariane space flight number 209. All is well, and with the sun setting, we're ready for liftoff of the 5th Ariane 5 of the year and the 65th Ariane 5 from the space base. Joshua Jempel here with Pierre-Yves Bertin tonight. Pierre-Yves is Program Director at Ariane's Customer Service. Hi.
Good evening. So tonight is a very special moment. It's the outcome of a very long preparation phase that lasted several years, because this is the time it takes to build the launch vehicle and the 2 satellites that will be launched tonight.
We're coming to you, as we always do, live from the Jupiter Mission Control Center. To get us started, Pierre-Yves will lead us through a look at the launch vehicle.
So first stage, EAP, those are the 2 big boosters on the side of Ariane. They weigh each 278 tons, and they use solid propellant. In the middle, between the 2 EAPs, you have the EPC, the main cryogenic stage. It works with liquid oxygen and with liquid hydrogen. Its mass is 188 tons. Above the EPC, another cryogenic stage, the ESCA. It's a small ring compared to the previous one. It weighs 20 tons, much less than the previous one, but it's very important nonetheless. And above the ESC, the fairing, which houses the two satellites. Overall, 775 tons, 90% of which is propellant.
Time now to meet some of the key players responsible for making the mission happen. Here, the Arianespace Flight Directorate, Arianespace's top management, Jean-Yves Le Gall-Youssat, Patrick Loire, head of the Arianespace Kourou facilities, the local contact, and with them, Edouard Perez, the chief technical officer and the living technical memory of Arianespace. Anything unexpected come up, there's Mr. Perez. During the mission, you'll see these gentlemen on the phones to their teams here at the base, back in Paris. Any decisions have to be made, they will make them. We got to look at the launcher, Pierre-Yves. Give us a look at the payload now.
So below the fairing, the top satellite is Astra 2F. Astra 2F is a large telecom satellite from SES. It weighs 6,000 tons and it's hosted on top of the Silda, which is this gray cylindrical structure which supports the upper satellite. Below the Silda, inside the Silda, in fact, there is the second passenger, JSAT-10 from ISRO. Its mass is 3.4 tons and both weigh overall 10.2 tons.
We want to say hello to all our friends at Betzdorf, the SES headquarters, and out at ISRO in Bangalore. Also to CNES and ESA taking the broadcast for the very first time this evening in their new home in Paris. Hope everyone is enjoying the evening. Continuing our presentation of the players, this is where you usually are.
Yes,
the commercial
so
side.
Luca waved his hand at me. Luca is program director. He sits close to his customer, SES, and his role is to keep his customer happy during the execution of a launch contract between Arianespace and SES.
We have a series of films coming up. In the first one, we're going to have a quick look at Astra 2F, which will be presented by Arianespace's Luca Checchio, the project manager. We'll be back with more.
For tonight's launch, Astra 2F will be in the upper position. Astra 2F is built by EADS Astrium for the leading satellite operator, SES. We have been launching the SES satellites now for more than 25 years. This long-standing relation has allowed us to create a tight and fruitful collaboration for the preparation of the launches. Collaboration that has allowed us to improve the quality of our service and to tune them in the appropriate manner to the needs of our customer. I would like to thank the SES and Astrium satellite teams for their professionalism, but let's enjoy tonight's launch.
Outside, Ariane waiting. The two companies, SES and ISRO, Luxembourg and India, have flown many, many times with Ariane, but never together. Tonight is the first time they're sharing a launch vehicle.
So one launch vehicle, two contracts with satellite customers. Christophe Bardou is the second program director next to his customer, ISRO. So one role of the program director is to ensure that all interfaces between the spacecraft and the launch vehicle are fit for launch.
And we're going to go over to Christophe Bardou now for our second short film, a presentation of our second passenger, JSAT-10.
ISRO, the Indian Space Agency, is one of Ariane's oldest and most loyal customers. More than 30 years ago, L03, the third Ariane 1 development flight, launched the Apple satellite. Arianespace went on to launch satellites in the INSAT 1, 2, 3 and 4 families. In addition, there have been two spacecraft manufactured by ISRO, W2M for Eutelsat and ILAS-1 for Avanti. In this spatial relationship enjoyed by Arianespace and our Indian friends, each is aware of the other's needs, and this really facilitates mission preparations. I'd like to wish my ISRO friends every success with JSAT-10.
Long life to JSAT-10.
You're going to hear in just a moment the DDO, or Range Operations Manager, sitting next to Philippe Roland here. He's going to call out the 7-minute mark, which is at the beginning of the synchronized sequence. This is the final part of the final countdown.
Top H0 moins 7 minutes.
The launcher is becoming autonomous, power passing from the ground to the onboard computers.
So we've seen two key people, the mission director and the DDO. These two persons take over from the program directors in the final stage of the launch campaign. They manage day-to-day operations with the satellite customers when the satellite is on the launch base. And these two people, mission director and DDO, provide the customer with all necessary means for them to perform their operations.
There's a standard order of operations for every launch campaign, and in our next film, you'll see how Ariane 5 is assembled. Parts of Ariane 5 come from Europe by ship. They are taken by road to the CSG's Launcher Integration Building where, for 2 weeks, the launch vehicle is painstakingly put together. The two boosters are fitted to the launcher, then the upper stage is mated atop the main stage. Lacking only the satellites, Ariane 5 is then moved to the final assembly building. Astra 2F and GSAT-10 arrived by air. Their preparation is carried out in parallel with the launcher's campaign in buildings dedicated to this purpose. Special teams monitor their vital systems by tests which are carried out in clean rooms. In daily meetings, the key players responsible for the launch make sure all is going according to plan in this important phase of the campaign. Arianespace and the customer teams oversee satellite activities in the final assembly building, where the satellites and launch vehicle come together. The two passengers are placed inside the fairing atop the launcher. GSAT-10 in the lower position under the Silda or carrying structure, and Astra 2F in the upper berth. The day before launch, Ariane 5 is rolled out on the rail track to the launch pad, ready now for her mission. And that mission getting underway in less than 5 minutes. Professionals say that this synchronized sequence, the final 7 minutes, are the most intense moment of the entire launch campaign, with 1,001 things to check.
And we now turn to the customer side with the key people. There are two key people per satellite. The first one is the DMS. The DMS coordinates all the operations with the ground stations located somewhere in Europe for ECS, somewhere in India for ISRO. So he makes sure that these ground stations will be ready to track the satellite once separated from the launch vehicle. Next to the DMS is the CPS. The CPS is the representative of the spacecraft manufacturer, and his role is to coordinate the spacecraft remote control. This control is from a building 10 kilometers away from the launch pad, and it reports directly to Jupiter the status of a spacecraft. And in a few minutes, we should turn, the CPS should order the power from ground to onboard, making the satellite autonomous.
4 minutes before launch, and intense concentration here in Jupiter. Tonight, don't forget, represents long months, years sometimes of work for many of these people. All across the base, everyone attentive as we approach liftoff. We're going to show you some of the other key players responsible for the launch tonight. Another place that's very busy is the launch zone, as you can imagine, closer to the pad than where we are here in Jupiter. The launch management teams are here under the direction of the COL, or the Launch Operations Manager.
So the COL is responsible to perform all the necessary tasks in due time for the launch vehicle to work correctly. The COL is assisted by the CPAP, our in-production project manager. CPAP is there to assess any anomaly arising during the course of operations, and he has a team of specialists which goal is to resolve these anomalies as soon as possible without interruptions of nominal operations.
The COL and his people are at this moment going over the final checks and verifications on all the hundreds and hundreds of parts of Ariane's launch system. They coordinated the launcher campaign and are monitoring the countdown right now. They have, in fact, been working nonstop since yesterday morning and the beginning of the rollout, Ariane 5's transfer to the pad, all that under the direction of the COL. All is going according to schedule here at the space base, and we know that because of the green status panels that you can see on the left. These are a real-time summary of the different services provided by the base. We checked them during the first part of the mission. The panels, basically, it's a go, no-go, green-red resume of everything it takes to launch Ariane. Green means okay, red means the opposite.
And behind each green, there is a complex system that is monitored by a team of several people. So this team is ready to address any anomaly arising, resolve it within minutes so that the countdown can proceed.
Time for you to go, I think, huh? We're going to say goodbye temporarily to Pierre-Yves, who's going outside. He's never seen a launch from here, and he's going to watch the action from the terrace. We'll get his reactions when he comes back. Don't get lost. Have fun out there. This is a split-screen image. The last thing you're going to see, so we want to explain it, liquid hydrogen on the left, liquid oxygen on the right. These are the propellant feeder arms. It's a close-up shot. The camera will pull back. You'll get a better view. They're going into the upper stage. This stage needs to be filled up to the last minute because the cold propellant we're using evaporates in this heat. Liquid oxygen is at minus 160 degrees, liquid hydrogen minus 240. They boil off and need constant topping up.
À tous DDO, attention pour agir au moins 1 minute.
The DDO is going to call out the 1 minute mark now, and we'll be into the final 60 seconds of tonight's mission.
Top moins 1 minute.
All that's left is to explain the ignition sequence, so you can get that while you're watching. Remember, we mentioned how power was passing from the ground to the launcher to make her autonomous. Well, this phase is carried out by the onboard computer. Here's what to watch for. The sequence begins when the cryogenic arms, those are the yellow bars in the middle there, they will swing back at minus 5 seconds. At 0, you'll hear the DDO call out allumage, which means ignition, and the main engine will light, but we do not lift off. You count to 7. For 7 seconds, the computers are checking the performance in the main engine while it's burning on the pad. They do that twice to confirm it. If all is well, then they give the orders to light the boosters, and away we go. We'll let you listen to the DDO as he calls out the final countdown.
À tous les DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage du moteur Vulcain. Allumage des 2 EAP, décollage. Paramètres bord normaux.
Well, we're underway. Beautiful shots. Close-up. This is taken by our cameraman Zaza out at the terrace. Hope Pierre-Yves is enjoying himself. Did you see the cryo arms swing open? And did you count to 7? Right on time at 18:18 local time. Ariane 5 began her mission lifting off perfectly from the ground, powering off the pad through the low clouds and into the skies above French Guiana here. These are beautiful shots, always impressive. Ariane rising into the sky, look at that, above French Guiana, leaving a trail of vapor. Right now, she weighs 775 tons at liftoff. She's burning 5 tons of fuel per second. The DDO says everything is okay on board. 2.5 tons in each booster per second. And the core stage burning another 300 kilos per second. Ariane now following the program in the onboard computer, which is located in the vehicle equipment bay that's just under the satellites, which gives all the orders, including stage separations, which you'll soon begin to see. The VEB, vehicle equipment bay, is the cockpit of the launcher, if you will.
Propulsion normale.
All the equipment weighs about a ton. We're in the first of 4 flight phases. The first 3 are powered. The last is not. We'll describe each in turn when Pierre gets back so that you can follow Ariane as she heads across the Atlantic in about 20 minutes, not even 20 minutes, where she'll separate the satellites roughly over the 2 coasts of Africa. Right now, the first flight phase, the single core stage engine is burning, and the 2 boosters are burning. The boosters will burn for another 6 or 7 seconds, 240 tons in just over 2 minutes. They're the first to be extinguished.
Séparation des étages d'accélération à
The DDO has just called out the extinction. You can see them falling away, and the single point of light burning below them, that's the main engine, still burning the core stage. What it looks like up there, as they drop off the vehicle, there's another one, of course, out of camera range on the left. They're going to fall about 500 kilometers from shore. Look at that, beautiful shots. The main engine still burning in the middle, and the 2 boosters to either side. They're gonna fall. The boosters are into a protected area. French Guiana chosen in part as a base for its opening on the ocean.
La trajectoire du lanceur est normale.
Launches posing no threat to the local population. Before the boosters are empty of their fuel, their push diminishes, and the onboard computer senses this drop in acceleration and gives the order to separate them. We're in the second powered flight phase, the main engine burning alone, and all is normal, says the DDO. And Pierre-Yves has come back, and his eyes are as big as dinner plates. How is it out there?
That was a great experience. So it starts with a bright glow on the horizon, and then it rises up along the sky. It leaves a trail of clouds lit by the sun, and it was fantastic. Really a great experience.
What impressed you most? The sight, the sound?
The trail of clouds lit by the sun. That was really unexpected. With the sunset, it had many rich colors from pink to white, yellow. Fantastic.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
Well, I hope that inspires some of you to come down and watch a launch. We have separated the fairing, and we can separate that now because
there's no air around the upper satellite anymore. The fairing protects the satellite. No more fairing needed. So fairing jettisoned and saves 2 tons for the rest of the mission.
All right, briefly get us started. On the upper left, you see the cursor, and on the lower left, the 3 letters. There's A and V on the bottom. Start with the cursor on the top.
So cursor on the top, in fact, is...
We'll have to come back from the news after that. We'll get a description of all that from Pierre-Yves. For now, the latest news from Arianespace. August 2nd, Arianespace successfully launched another 2 communication satellites, Intelsat 20 for the international Intelsat group and Hylas 2 for Europe. The 64th Ariane 5 mission set 2 records. Nearly 10.2 tons were lifted into orbit from the French Guiana Space Base, and it was the 50th straight success for the European vehicle.
On September 17th, Arianespace affiliate StarSem successfully launched META-B on a Soyuz from Baikonur. This was the 1792nd launch of Soyuz, now also launched from French Guiana. Weighing 4 tons, META-B was injected into polar orbit and will provide weather data such as atmospheric temperature and humidity.
And 2 more Soyuz flights from the space base before the year is out. In September, the last 2 Galileo in-orbit validation satellites for Europe's GPS constellation. And in November, the Pléiades 1B Earth observation system goes into polar orbit.
The VA210 launch with 2 telecom satellites is due in November. The Ariane vehicle for this mission is already assembled here at the base. In parallel, the 4th ATV named Albert Einstein has arrived. The 20-ton vehicle is undergoing tests for 6 months prior to its launch in spring next year.
Vega's second mission also just ahead. She will deliver the first of 5 Verta flights, the Vega Research and Technology Accompaniment Program. These missions will run between 2013 and 2015.
So I'm back to explain to you the significance of the curve that you can see on the upper left corner of your screen. So this is the theoretical curve which the launch vehicle is supposed to follow, and the dot corresponds to the current position of the launch vehicle. Everything is normal, the dot is on the curve. You can see A is the altitude, 170 kilometers. That's the height of the launch vehicle over the ground.
Back with more, but first the second of 2 news reports on Arianespace. Lots going on with new contracts.
The annual Euroconsult gathering drew many world satellite operators in Paris to discuss ongoing business and future opportunities. Arianespace participated in the traditional roundtable with other launch service providers. Geneviève Fioraso, the French minister in charge of space, was invited by Arianespace.
At Euroconsult, Hispasat once again chose Arianespace to launch 2 new satellites, Amazonas 4A and Hispasat AG1. They will be the Spanish operator's 8th and 9th satellites launched by Arianespace.
Today we have signed a new contract with Arianespace that includes 2 new satellites of our fleet, the Amazonas 4A and the AG1. We have taken this decision because our track record with Arianespace has been very good during these years that we have been working with them.
Also at the conference, Arianespace and SkyPerfect JSAT Corporation signed a multi-launch agreement for Arianespace launch services in the near future for the Japanese group.
The Berlin Air Show was the occasion to recall the essential ties existing between Germany and Arianespace. At this event, Peter Hinz, coordinator for space and aerospace at the German Ministry of Economics and Technology, exchanged his views with Jean-Yves Le Gall at a dinner at the Oster Bank.
At the Asia-Pacific Conference in September, Jean-Yves Le Gall presented an Arianespace customer, Tom Choi, with the Satellite Executive of the Year award. Finally, also in September, while on a 3-day visit to French Guiana, the French Minister of Overseas Departments and Territories, Victorine Laurel, visited the CSG space base with its director, Bernard Chamoul, and Arianespace's Patrick Loire. On the lower left of your screen, the letter A, that's our altitude, you can see, and under that, V is our speed. We've been picked up by our first downrange tracking station over the border in Brazil. They received telemetry. What's telemetry?
So telemetry is the data emitted by the launch vehicle during the flight. This data is made of onboard parameters. There are above 1,000 parameters, such as engine pressure, temperature, and vibrations. And this is sent in real time back to ground, where it is received by the stations.
All Ariane's trajectory. There is the extinction of the lower stage and separation of the lower stage. You see how that happens. And ignition of the upper stage. These 3 commands given by the onboard computer in just about 12 seconds. So we're in the third and final powered flight phase, the upper stage burning on a single engine, like the first. What's the role of the upper stage?
So the upper stage provides a fine-tuning of the launch vehicle trajectory. It's much less powerful as the stage that are now separated, but it nonetheless provides a significant kick to the desired orbit for separation of the spacecrafts.
Next up, a look at Arianespace's winning strategy. Meanwhile, the trajectory, the GDO says, is quite normal. Everything's fine. On the winning strategy, 50 straight launches with Louis Laurent, who is Arianespace's Senior VP for Programs. This unbroken series of 50 successful launches is, first and foremost, a huge source of satisfaction and pride for us, because space is a risky business and we operate a complex system. It's also a record that sets us in a different category from our competitors. And it's the fruit of all the hard work and effort put in by our teams in Europe and French Guiana to industrialize the Ariane 5 system. Over the past 10 years, we've based our strategy on 5 basic simple principles. Stabilization of our technical configuration, a clever mix of technical conservatism with the need for continuous technical improvement, a clearly specified organization which can be easily applied and followed by teams working both in Europe and French Guiana, technical transparency which imposes rigor and encourages discussions with opposing views, and motivated and competent teams working in a stable environment. We know that past successes cannot necessarily guarantee future glory, which is why we're committed to applying these principles in the future. We feel that the 5-principle approach enables us to have an extremely efficient launch system. We're in the second half of the mission. We can start to focus a bit on the satellites. Astra 2F is the heaviest SES satellite launched by Arianespace to date at 6 tons. The heaviest previously was NSS 12 at 5.7 tons, launched in October by Ariane in October of 2009. Beginning of the collaboration between the two companies goes back to 1985. In our next film, we'll be hearing from Martin Halliwell and Dennis Wheeler of SES on their collaboration with Arianespace.
When constructing a satellite, SES collaborates closely with its carefully selected partners, like Astrium of France. Every stage of the construction of a satellite requires an incredibly high level of care and precision, because once the satellite is in space, there's no way to repair it if something goes wrong. A crucial phase in the construction of a satellite is in the coupling of the communication and service sections, as this is when the satellite takes shape for the first time.
Yeah, the Astra 2F satellite is manufactured by Astrium. It's their Eurostar 3000 platform. It weighs approximately 6,000 kilograms at liftoff, has a 15-year lifetime, carries Ka, Ku band payload.
It's the first of 3 satellites that we'll be launching and putting into orbit at 28.2 degrees east, and it'll be replacing our current fleet, where today we have 4 satellites operating there. The first satellite is being launched right now. The second satellite will be Astra 2E, which will be launched at the beginning of next year, and the final part of the pulsar will be Astra 2G, and that will be launched at the beginning of 2014. 28.2 is a critical orbital position for SES. It is our major orbital position for the UK and Ireland. We have some very, very important customers there. Obviously Sky, we have the BBC, we have ITV, and we have Channel 4 there. We're serving around about 13 million homes from a DTH point of view, and around about 3 million cable homes as well into that marketplace.
Arianespace's reliability is very important to SES. It's high on our list when we go out for a launch vehicle. We look for the reliability. That's the big number.
Arianespace we've been working with for forever. This is our 36th launch with Arianespace, using both the Ariane 4 vehicle and now obviously more recently the Ariane 5 vehicle. We are extremely happy with them, with the performance of the operation. We are very comfortable. We were very happy to be once again in Kourou. And as you know, obviously we have a big European content, not only with EADS, with the Astrium satellite system, with the 5 satellites we have there, but also we have the 2 fully allocated launches with Ariane, and with an option for a 3rd.
All is well on board. The second stage burning normally. Another 9 minutes to go in that burn. We're being followed now by our second downrange tracking station. Little personal note there from Dennis Wheeler. That's Ascension Island in the Atlantic Ocean.
So there are several thousands of kilometers between Natal, the previous station, and Ascension Island, but all these stations are interconnected and send their data back to a head office, which is located just a few kilometers from here, and which is called the CVI. And the CVI's job is to witness the main events of a flight and report back to Jupiter.
Up next, a look at SES, operators of the Astra fleet, and we're going to go to an interview with its chief, Roman Bausch. Back with more of the mission in a moment.
We now have a fleet of 51 satellites, 52 with this launch. Renewing our existing fleet will require roughly 3 or 4 new satellites per year, 3 or 4 launches per year. This means there will be a continuous need for launcher services, not counting the growth we envisage. The satellite market is very stable, and launch providers will have to keep up with regular demand. We have had 35 launches using Ariane 4 and Ariane 5, and tonight's launch, Astra 2F, is our 36th satellite. We are building another 5 satellites, which will be launched in 2013-2014. Our long-term launch contract with Arianespace will enable some of these satellites to be launched on an Ariane launcher, Arianespace being one of the 2 main launch operators that we use. There will always be a mix of heavy and light satellites. Some operators have access to wider frequency bandwidth and need heavier satellites, whereas for others the bandwidth is limited and narrower, and the lighter satellite is better suited. There is also new technology being developed in electric propulsion, and soon it will be possible to have lighter satellites with the same power as their heavier counterparts. New generation launchers will have to adapt to these requirements and cover the full range of satellite operator needs. I think that having a modular launcher will be the best solution, one able to service both heavy and light satellites in a competitive environment.
In the news, Pierre-Yves, we heard about a multi-launch agreement for JSAT, and tonight's launch of Astra 2F is the 6th satellite launch within such an agreement, which began in 2007. What's a multi-launch agreement?
So a multi-launch agreement is a long-term arrangement between Arianespace and its customers, and it consists in an advance booking of several launches over several years. So the advantage for the customer is that he secures launch opportunities over this period of time, and for Arianespace, the advantage is that we are able to plan in advance those launches.
So everyone benefits.
Everyone benefits.
All right, we've been picked up by our next to last tracking station in Gabon. We looked at the relationship between Arianespace and SES. Over to ISRO now for a word on that company's long collaboration with Arianespace.
GSAT-10 satellite has communication transponders in 12 in KU band, 12 in normal C band, and 6 in extended C band. And it also has the GPS-aided geo-augmented navigation system, Gagan payload system is there. So these services are mainly meant for the DTH operations in KU band and also for VSAT applications and broadcast applications in India. We are very comfortable with Arianespace cooperation, what is going on. And GSAT-10 is the 15th satellite we are launching from using the services from the Arianespace and from Kourou. We are very comfortable with Arianespace. And as far as the cooperation is concerned, yes, Indian vehicle, recently it has taken the Spot 6 satellite on PSLV. And we are also launching the Saral in the coming few months, wherein we have the Canis payloads, Altigo and Altica and Argos. These payloads are also going to be there on that. And we have had the Canis payloads on our megatropic satellites, and we have had very good cooperation between ESA and Arianespace, Canis and ISRO programs. And it's a very healthy one, and we are very happy here.
GSAT-10 arrived at the Kourou Space Base on July 31st and began its preparations. Very specific procedures, I'm told.
Yes, on GSAT, we've seen in the film a check of the solar panel deployment. And in fact, the solar panels are not designed to sustain their own weight. So for this test, there is a specific rail system put in place to compensate for gravity. And so this is an example of a specific test that the satellite undergoes on the launch base.
GSAT-10 at 3.4 tons is the heaviest ISRO satellite launched by Ariane. The heaviest previously, GSAT-8 at 3.1 tons, launched in May of 2010. The first ISRO satellite that went up in 1981 on Ariane, the Apple capsule, weighed a mere 670 kilos. So you see how the program has advanced. Our last film tonight will give us a look inside ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization.
As the generations and time passes, new ways of communication are introduced by the mankind to the world of technology. In India's current era, nearly 90 crore mobile users, 21 crore internet users and 4 crore DTH users require new age communication satellite to feed their requirements of high qualitative uninterrupted connectivity for their life to communicate. The Indian space program has now stepped on the horizon of the revolutionized communications need. Indian National Satellite System, INSAT, feeding the requirements and various needs of the country like TV broadcasting and DTH services, business communications, rural connectivity tele-education, telemedicine, emergency communications for disaster management. Now, to add a glory of its own heritage in space program, after GSAT-8, India is going to launch new edge-of-art communication satellite GSAT-10.
The GSAT-10 communication satellite with 30 communication transponders on board is intended to augment the capacity of INSAT system. At present, INSAT system has 8 communication satellites with 168 transponders, and they provide a variety of services for the country, for the government, for the commercial sector, and for the society. The GSAT-10 has a navigation transponder which is for improving the accuracy of GPS signals received over the Indian region. We do have a navigation transponder in the GSAT-8 at the moment. So these two are going to be providing a new facility for the aviation sector.
Less than a minute to go in the upper stage burn before we move into the final procedures, the ballistics phase, and get everything ready for the satellite separation. We have been picked up by our last downrange tracking station in Malindi on the east coast of Africa. You wanted to say a word about performance tonight?
Yes, tonight's launch is a record-breaking. The payload mass of 10.2 tons is the heaviest payload ever lifted by Ariane 5 to geostationary transfer orbit. So this is the second record, in fact, in the year, and it demonstrates the adaptation of the Ariane system to the increasingly heavy SATCOMs, which is a general market trend.
Increasingly heavy, but I'm told also that miniaturization is also a trend. Doesn't that mean that satellites are getting smaller?
In fact, it's not the case for geostationary satellites, because miniaturization, in fact, benefits the performance of a satellite, which stays roughly same size and same mass. But it is expected, perhaps in the coming years, that new technologies for satellite propulsion, so a shift from liquid propulsion as of today to electric propulsion, will provide lighter satellites.
The DDO is called out extinction of the upper stage. You can see the nozzle shutting down, everything proceeding perfectly on board Ariane 5. We're now in the fourth and final flight phase. This one is not powered. No more propulsion as we ready the composite for separation of the two passengers. We've hit our maximum speed. You see on the bottom left, you should start to see the speed slowing down. That's the V line on the left. So with no propulsion now, what's happening?
There is a very small propulsion left, however. You can see on the picture small jets of gas, which in fact provide little pushes to the composite.
And they're popping on and off on the bottom there, the white.
Correct. And the purpose of these small pushes, they are spread all around the composite. The idea is to orient the composite to the desired direction for Astra 2F separation.
Because we have to separate Astra in one direction, that's just in about a minute. Then we have to separate the Silda, the carrying structure. You'll explain all that in another direction. Then the second satellite, GSAT-10, in yet a third direction, right?
Yes, and to talk about separation of the satellite is mainly made of a cylindrical structure, and this cylinder is mated to another cylindrical structure on the composite. And both are clamped, and when the separation is triggered by an onboard order, a small explosive sets the clamp loose, and a set of springs then pushes gently the satellite apart from the composite, and we'll see that shortly now.
And that's roughly the same system for both satellites and for the Silda?
Silda, it's quite different. There is a pyro cord which breaks the Silda. This is slightly different.
The pyro cord like we saw with the fairing?
Correct.
All right, so a lot of different systems, a lot of different propulsion systems on Ariane, a lot of different separation systems. This is all that's being checked out by the computers in the synchronized sequence. We're waiting for the DDO to confirm separation of Astra 2F, due up in just about 3 or 4 seconds. And there is, right on time, separation of Astra. You can see pushed away from the mothership, just like Pierre-Yves described. You notice in the hall here the people very politely holding their applause until the second passenger GSAT-10 will be separated. That has become something of a tradition here. I don't believe it's planned among the passengers.
So Astra 2F is now in transfer orbit. It's its temporary destination. So the transfer orbit starts at 250 kilometers altitude with a high speed communicated by the launch vehicle. And that's enough to reach 36,000 kilometers, which is its final destination. Within hours and days from now, there will be several maneuvers which Astra 2F will perform with its own means. And the purpose of these maneuvers is to maintain Astra 2F permanently at 36,000 kilometers. At this point, it will become a fixed point in the sky, and that's what is called geostationary orbit.
So, some of those maneuvers, there will be 4 apogee motor firings to get her up to her final slot on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th day. Solar array deployment in a week. Reflector deployment on the same day. Earth acquisition and bus testing in a week and a day. And the satellite control transferred over to Betzdorf in Luxembourg in just under 2 weeks.
So we could see continuous changes in the composite orientation. We are approaching cylinder separation, and there it is, cylinder is now separated.
Pushed away again from the mothership, revealing GSAT-10.
Yeah. And the purpose of these reorientations is to prevent any collision between the cylinder and the spacecraft.
All this activity comes during what is sometimes called the ballistics phase, in the period in between 2 satellite separations. Since most of Ariane launches are double, we do a lot of this. We have a lot of experience here. It's also called a free-flying phase. It's also called the space ballet.
Yeah, so free-flying phase, it's just like an apple falling from a tree, but never reaching the ground. That's really what the satellites are currently doing. And the relative movements between the satellites and the cylinder is what is called the space ballet, because there's no damping, no air, so small forces produces large displacements, just like the subtle movements of dancers on a stage.
With the cylinder gone, we're waiting for separation of GSAT-10 coming up in just under a minute. GSAT-10, which weighs 3.4 tons. The vehicle equipment bay weighs a ton. The empty upper stage and adapters in all, something like roughly 9 tons. Remember, we started with 775 tons. Most of that weight is fuel.
And we're waiting for GSAT-10 separation.
The mood here again, everyone very focused on their tasks. They've been through these operations many, many times before, although Astra 2F just separated 3 minutes ago. There's still a certain concentration here.
And we should get confirmation from CVI very shortly that this separation is effective.
You'll hear the DDO call out the confirmation.
Séparation du satellite GSAT-10.
There we are. And the applause. And there's the final good news. You saw GSAT-10 pushed away from the mothership. You see the smiles all around. Ariane 5 successfully releasing her 2nd passenger. And right on target. The mood, as you can see, very buoyant now here in Jupiter and all across the Space Center after a few moments of high concentration. Now that GSAT-10 is up, her early activities, she will have 3 thruster firings to get her in position. One in about 25.5 hours after liftoff, the second in 2.5 days, and the third in 4 days. Solar array also in 4 days, and station acquisitions, they tell us somewhere between a week and 12 days. We are waiting now for the speeches, the traditional post-launch speeches. We'll be hearing, of course, from Jean-Yves Le Gall, and we'll be hearing from Rick Starkovs of SES, from Dr. Radhakrishnan, ISRO chairman by video, and from Mr. Shivakumar of ISRO, who is here. While we're waiting for Mr. Le Gall to come out from the operational fishbowl, as they call it, he's no doubt receiving and extending congratulations to customers and colleagues. They're setting up the podium with the cameras. And you wanted to say a word on...
Yes, just to indicate that this is not the end of the mission itself. It's, of course, the end of a launch vehicle mission, because separation of a satellite is that end. But the satellites are only at the beginning of their lives, and their lives will last, is due to last 15 years. So as you mentioned, after reaching geostationary orbit, the spacecraft will be maintained there by their own onboard autonomous system. However, so this staying on station is called housekeeping.
A launch replay now. Allowing you to relive those moments with you, Pierre-Yves.
Yes, so and
seeing that for the second time.
Imagine now the spacecraft cruising up to 36,000 altitude.
Second replay from another site. There are several observation sites where we have cameras. Ariane once again delivered, but lots more ahead, in particular the speeches, so don't go away. What third replay from another, even closer. Jean-Yves Le Gall is at the podium, and his voice will be the next one you hear. Mr. Le Gall, you have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you have just seen, we have had a successful launch, the 65th Ariane 5 launch, which has placed Astra 2F and GSAT-10 in orbit. And of course, I am delighted by this result. First of all, because this is a continuation of our record that remains unbroken. It's a 51st success in a row. And also, this is the sixth time that we have actually launched at H0. This therefore shows that we have remained hardworking and committed to providing our customers with a reliable service that is unmatched in our industry. Secondly, because this launch is the climax of this particularly successful month of September. It's been very exciting from an operational point of view because we had Starsim's launch of Meteor B on a Soyuz launcher in Baikonur, but also from a commercial point of view because at the beginning of the month during the Euroconsult symposium we announced the signing of several new contracts for launches. And finally, because we had a few problems on this particular launch which delayed it by a little bit. Unexpected they were, but now we have seen that the talent and competence of our teams have proven once again that we are capable of doing this. So I'd first like to thank our customers, SES and ISRO, who have once again placed their trust and confidence in us, and thank you for coming here to Kourou. First of all, Astra 2F. It's the 36th satellite launched by Arianespace for SES, and this will allow SES to maintain its leading role as the provider of DTH broadcast services. This new success is the result of our long-standing relationship with SES, which is expressed clearly in our multi-launch service agreement, which gives us greater flexibility and also can give us tailor-made services to our customers. I'd like to therefore thank Romain Bosch, who I think is in Betzdorf, for following this closely, and I would like to thank you for your trust in us, and Richard Starkovs, who is here with us today. Once again, I would like to thank you for this trust, and he will take the floor later on. I'd also like to thank the representatives of ISRO. This evening, we have launched GSAT-10. ISRO is one of our most faithful customers. We started work together almost 30 years ago with Apple. It was the third Ariane launch, and if I count, we're now at our 209th one. So you can see here that we have had many years of work together. 15 satellites in all for Israel. We're very proud to contribute in this way to the development of telecommunications in India. I would also like to thank Dr. Radhakrishnan, who I think is watching us in Bangalore. I'd like to thank him for his trust, and I'd like to thank Mr. Shivakumar, who is here. He is the director of ISAC in Bangalore. And to conclude, I would like to thank all those who, as every time for each launch, have worked so hard in Europe and in French Guiana to develop, produce, and launch an Ariane 5. It is your hard work which allows us to gain this trust from our clients and have repeated successes, and to strengthen our position and that of Europe on the world launch system scene. I would like to now give the floor to our customers. I think Dr. Radhakrishnan will be sending us a message from Bangalore, then Mr. Shivakumar, and then Mr. Starkovs, who's got his hat on, will come and conclude. Once again, thank you very much, and let us give the floor to Dr. Radhakrishnan.
Let me thank and compliment Arianespace for successfully placing the GSAT-10 communication satellite in the geostationary transfer orbit. The Indian Master Control Facility at Hassan has already taken command and control of GSAT-10 satellites. During the next 4 days, we have a series of important operations to perform. Firstly, the GSAT-10 satellite has to be raised to 36,000 kilometers circular orbit above the equator, and this would be done in 3 steps using the propulsion system situated in the GSAT-10. Subsequently, we have 4 major deployments: the 2 solar panels and 2 communication antennae. Subsequently, we would move the satellite to the intended orbital slot of 83 degrees and then switch on the payloads. There is a month of operation of switching on the payloads in a sequence and also testing them. And by November 2012, we expect to operationalize the GSAT-10 communication satellite and make it available for the user community.
Good evening to all of you. Let me at the outset congratulate Ariane team for having launched our satellite so precisely into the geostationary transfer orbit. And as Chairman ISRO was telling, we've got plenty of work to do on this satellite which has gone into the geostationary transfer orbit. So from now onwards, we'll take over the satellite and see that we really position it at the appropriate place, 83 degrees east longitude, and see that we bring up the satellite for operations as soon as possible. We want to do it in a month's time, and we will be able to do that. And at the outset, let me thank Ariane team and the rest of the people in Guyana who provided required support to our people here, and also making the launch campaign an excellent one. I was told that it was acknowledged as one of the best campaigns ever taken by ISRO. And we continue to move with Arianespace, I'm sure, because we'll have many more missions to really handle from Kourou also, and also our own geostationary transfer satellite launch vehicle at India is also getting ready. We should be able to have some of those launches coming up in the next quarter, and see that we also move in that direction. But certainly this has given a lot of impetus in terms of communication revolution, again, continued revolution in the country, and also we'll have the Gagan payload, a twin payload in orbit. GSAT-8 had one of those things. GSAT-12 has another transponder coming up. With these two transponders in orbit, we'll be able to really maintain the Gagan services also operationalized within the country. So with that, we have started a new game now, new panels, new of those activities scheduled for us, and we are extremely thankful to Arianespace for making it happen, and we'll come back to Kourou again for the next launch. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Rick Starkovs from SES in Luxembourg, and I'd just like to thank Arianespace for the successful launch. I don't know about you, but I always get a little bit nervous, during the countdown and during the flight. And I feel a sense of relief right now, maybe a little bit of adrenaline or something going through me. This satellite is very important to us. It's for the SES Astra second orbital position at 28.2 degrees east, and it's for direct-to-home services, mainly in the UK, Ireland. It also has coverage in Africa. It's very important, though, because of its the continuity it will actually provide to some existing satellites that are at that orbital position. One of the reasons that we selected Astrium as a satellite builder is because of the high reliability of the satellites that they build. So I'd like to, thank EADS Astrium for the construction of the satellites. Also, our own SES team who followed and managed the contractor during the entire course of the program. I'd also like to thank CNES, CSG, and the European Space Agency for their contribution to the success. It's a very highly complex launch vehicle. I know all the minute details that go into it, and all the people that work on those minute details, I'd like to thank all of them too. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Starkovs. Mr. Starkovs started off by saying that he was a bit nervous. Well, let me reassure you, you're not alone. And I'd also like to thank our Indian friends who have said that they will be back soon for new launches. That's very good news. Now we have no time to lose. As you know, from the beginning of the year, we've already had 6 launches, and our goal is to have 10 in 2012. So in less than 2 weeks' time, we will be launching at 15 hours 15. Now, I think you probably remember this is the date of the Battle of Marignan, 1515. But anyway, we will be launching with the Soyuz launcher, and there will be 2 satellites that we will be launching. And then there will be another Ariane 5 launch and another Soyuz launch, if all goes well. But anyway, I would like to once again thanks everybody. Perfect launch at exactly H0. See you soon in 2 weeks' time.
So 51 straight successes for Arianespace. 2 new satellites beginning their lives now, Astra 2F and GSAT 10. Any last words, Gary?
Yes, I'd like to say hello to the spacecraft teams that are now monitoring the spacecraft into orbit. We mentioned the maneuvers, very important maneuvers, to bring those spacecraft to geostationary orbit. So these teams will work on that throughout the night. So hello to them and long life to the spacecrafts.
All right, as we move into a second half of the year, very full for Arianespace with 4 more launches of Ariane 5 and Soyuz from French Guiana, we will say goodbye. We'll be here for the next launch in October. We hope you will be too. Until then, on behalf of everybody here at the Space Base, Joshua Jampel with Pierre-Yves Bertin, saying thank you for being with us. Thanks also to the Arianespace production team. We hope everyone enjoyed it. We look forward to being with you next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
A lot of attention. NASA's Curiosity rover has sent back these incredible pictures of what seems to be an ancient riverbed. Scientists are saying that the size and the rounded shape of the pebbles in the rock indicates they've been transported and eroded in water. We'll have more on that later. So staying with the extraterrestrial theme, it seems that an ancient Buddhist statue that was recovered by a Nazi expedition was originally carved from a highly valuable meteorite. Researchers say that the 1,000-year-old object with its swastika on its stomach is made from part of the Chinga meteorite, which crashed about 15,000 years ago. NASA says its robotic rover has found clear evidence that water once flowed over the surface of Mars. It might look like just another rock to you, but the scientists say that the pictures here show pebbles which were given their shape through water erosion. While the robotic rover Curiosity has been exploring the planet for the last 7 weeks, it's slowly making its way to a 5-kilometre high mound of layered rock, which is rising from the floor of what's known as the Gale crater. And apparently, according to one line that I've just been reading, scientists are estimating the water that they've discovered was probably moving at a pace of 3 feet per second, somewhere between ankle and hip deep. And this is the first time that they're actually seeing water-transported gravel on Mars. That is quite a discovery, if confirmed.
Diese Bilder vom Mars versetzen die Forscher in Aufregung. In einem ausgetrockneten Flussbett fotografierte das Marsfahrzeug Curiosity zum ersten Mal von Wasser geformte Kieselsteine. Die US-Raumfahrtbehörde NASA ist sich sicher, dass die Struktur der Steine nur durch ein fließendes Gewässer, wie man es auf der Erde tausendfach findet, entstanden sein kann. Die entscheidenden Merkmale, wie man sie an diesen Kieselsteinen sehen kann, sind die runde Form und die Größe. Durch den bloßen Einfluss von Wind kann diese Art von Steinen nicht entstehen. Der Marsfluss im Gale-Krater könnte knöchel- bis hüfttief gewesen sein. Curiosity, zu Deutsch Neugier, machte die Bilder während der ersten 40 Tage nach der Landung hier in einer Animation sichtbar. Das Roboterauto ist Teil der bislang teuersten und technisch aufwendigsten Mars-Mission. Der Rover ist seit rund 2 Monaten auf dem Mars unterwegs und soll dort nach Spuren von Leben suchen. Die jetzt fotografierten Flusskiesel sind die Versicherung, dass wir schon eine erste Umgebung gefunden haben, in der es potenziell Leben gab. Auch wenn der Planet heute staubig und lebensfeindlich ist, könnten die einfachen Steine der Hinweis auf zumindest mikrobisches Leben sein.
Spektakuläre Aufnahmen. Der Mars-Roboter Curiosity hat Fotos von einem möglichen Flussbett zur Erde gefunkt. Auf den Bildern sind Steine verschiedener Größe zu erkennen. Ihre runde Form lasse darauf schließen, dass sie von Wasser geformt worden seien, so eine NASA-Sprecherin. Der rote Planet könne einst vielleicht sogar bewohnbar gewesen sein.
Im Dezember 2010 drang offenbar Öldampf ins Cockpit einer Germanwings-Maschine, die im Anflug auf Köln war. Pilot und Co-Pilot standen kurz vor der Ohnmacht. Der Pilot konnte das Flugzeug nur mit letzter Kraft sicher landen.
Es hätte in einer Katastrophe enden können. Ein Germanwings Airbus vom Typ A319 ist im Landeanflug auf den Kölner Flughafen, als plötzlich giftiges Gas ins Cockpit strömt. Die Piloten verlieren fast das Bewusstsein. Nur haarscharf schrappt der Airbus mit 149 Menschen an Bord an einem Absturz vorbei. Ein Vorfall, der sich Ende 2010 angeblich so ereignet haben soll, berichten mehrere Medien. Und er ist kein Einzelfall.
Also wir haben zahlreiche Vorfälle mit kontaminierter Kabinenluft. In den letzten 3 Jahren allein 67 amtlich erfasste. Die Dunkelziffer dürfte weit höher liegen. Das sehen wir auch an diesem speziellen Fall. Die Airline hat diesen Vorfall zwar gemeldet, aber offenbar nicht in dieser Dramatik, wie er stattgefunden hat.
Die Atemluft in Kabine und Cockpit wird in der Regel von den Triebwerken abgezapft. Atmen Menschen die kontaminierte Luft ein, können sich Schwindelgefühle, Übelkeit und gar Ohnmacht einstellen.
Das ist nicht nur eine Gefahr für die Gesundheit der Passagiere und der Crews, sondern auch eine Gefahr für die Flugsicherheit. Langfristig müssen wir weg davon, dass die Atemluft im Triebwerk abgesaugt wird.
Doch eine Lösung scheint schwierig, denn die Luftfahrtlobby ist mächtig und eine Umrüstung der Flugzeuge kostet viel Geld.
Der Airbus A319 ist nur noch 1000 Meter hoch, als der Co-Pilot einen beißenden Geruch im Cockpit bemerkt. Mir wurde speiübel, als ob jemand einfach in den Bauch geboxt hätte. Zeitgleich fühlten sich meine Arme und Beine taub an. Der Kapitän übernimmt das Steuer, aber auch er bekommt die giftigen Dämpfe schnell zu spüren. Mein Sichtfeld schränkte sich nahezu schlagartig ein und ich spürte ein starkes Schwindelgefühl. Ich hatte Angst, die Kontrolle über mein Handeln zu verlieren. Mit letzter Kraft gelingt es dem Piloten, die Maschine zu landen. Die Passagiere bekamen bekam von dem Vorfall nichts mit. Ihre Atemluft kam aus einem anderen Versorgungssystem. Vorwürfe, Germanwings habe den Vorfall vertuscht, wies das Unternehmen heute zurück. Giftige Atemluft ist für viele Fluglinien ein altbekanntes Problem.
Das Problem begleitet uns ja schon seit 30 Jahren, mehr oder minder stark. Und in den letzten Jahren gab es hier eine zusehende Sensibilisierung, weil wir auch einige Vorfälle hatten. Und wir als Berufsverband gesagt haben, das geht so nicht weiter, ist nicht akzeptabel.
Allein in Deutschland gab es offiziell 67 Vorfälle in den vergangenen 3 Jahren, wie bei dieser Maschine, die Anfang des Monats wegen Qualm in der Kabine nicht in Köln starten konnte. Die Atemluft wird an den Triebwerken abgezapft. Ist dort eine Dichtung defekt, kann Öl verdampfen und in den Innenraum gelangen. Das Nervengift TCP gelangt so in die Atemluft. Die Folgen: Bewusstseinsstörungen und Lähmungen. Obwohl das Problem bekannt ist, wurde an den Konstruktionen bisher nichts verändert.
Ich glaube, dass wir da einer sehr mächtigen Lobby gegenüberstehen, weil das natürlich auch mit gewissen finanziellen Aufwänden verbunden ist, dieses Konstruktionsproblem zu verändern.
Deshalb, so glauben Experten, hat es auch 2 Jahre gedauert, bis der Zwischenfall von Germanwings erst durch Medien an die Öffentlichkeit kam.
Zu einem Vorfall im Dezember 2010.
Die Piloten einer Germanwings-Maschine konnten den Flieger demnach nur mit ganz großer Mühe runterbringen, denn die Maschine war im Cockpit irgendwie mit Rauch versehen oder Gasen. Die Piloten fast ohnmächtig. Beim Sinkflug auf Köln-Bonn merkten sie einen irgendwie üblen Geruch. Ihnen wurde schlecht und die Arme und die Beine ganz taub.
Die Passagiere, die haben davon zunächst nichts mitgekriegt. Erst als Krankenwagen beide Piloten abgeholt haben, da wurde klar, da war gerade was Kritisches passiert.
Der Flugverkehr läuft heute normal auf dem Köln-Bonner Flughafen. Germanwings-Maschinen starten und landen planmäßig. Doch der Vorfall vor knapp 2 Jahren wirft Fragen auf. Es kursieren 2 völlig unterschiedliche Versionen. Laut der Bundesstelle für Flugunfalluntersuchung hatten sich in dem Cockpit geradezu dramatische Szenen abgespielt.
Während des Eindrehens sagte der Co-Pilot, dass ihm kotzübel sei. Er hatte den intensiven Geruch als elektrisch süßlich wahrgenommen. Dann verspürte der Flugkapitän ein starkes Kribbeln in Händen und Füßen. Gleichzeitig bemerkte er, wie ihm die Sinne schwanden.
Germanwings meldet den Fang einen Tag später, behauptet aber lediglich:
Die Landung erfolgte ohne nennenswerte Vorkommnisse.
Auch heute beim Chefpiloten von Germanwings hört sich die Schilderung des Vorfalls relativ harmlos an.
Ja, am Anflug auf Köln haben die Piloten undefinierbaren Geruch wahrgenommen, hatten leichte Spuren von Unwohlsein, haben dann die Sauerstoffmasken zum Eigenschutz aufgesetzt, wonach sich der Zustand denn verbessert hat. Und sie waren dann, nach Aussage des Kapitäns, voll handlungsfähig und haben das Flugzeug dann unter Erklärung von Luftnotlage hier in Köln gelandet.
Eine ganz andere Lesart findet sich in dem Bericht. Über den Co-Piloten heißt es:
Er fühlte sich nicht mehr in der Lage, einen aktiven Einfluss auf den weiteren Ablauf nehmen zu können. Beide Flugführer beschrieben ihre Verfassung kurz vor der Landung als surrealistisch und wie in einem Traum.
Welche Version stimmt? Germanwings gesteht ein, dass der Co-Pilot anschließend flugdienstuntauglich war. Es waren 6 Monate. Das hört sich zumindest gravierend an. Luftfahrtexperten schildern derweil, dass sich Zwischenfälle wie der vorliegende häufiger ereignen und kritisieren Fluggesellschaften wie Germanwings.
Man könnte aber präventiv durchaus tätig werden und Filteranlagen installieren. Die kosten natürlich Geld, wird aber meines Wissens noch bei ganz, ganz wenigen Fluggesellschaften so gehandhabt.
Unbeeindruckt zeigen sich die Fluggäste heute. Die Meldungen über den Germanwings-Vorfall haben sie alle gehört. Trotzdem tritt niemand von seiner Reise zurück.
Sowas kann mal passieren, aber Angst habe ich jetzt keine.
Wir sind Vielflieger, fliegen ganz oft nach London, kein Problem.
Das ist immer noch das sicherste Verkehrsmittel, oder?
Merkwürdig ist, dass das fast 2 Jahre gedauert hat, um das hochzukriegen, aber ansonsten ist es relativ relaxed.
Der Fall ist mit der heutigen Diskussion vermutlich nicht abgeschlossen. Der Bericht der Bundesstelle ist lediglich ein Zwischenbericht.
Ja, und dieses Problem mit giftigen Dämpfen an Bord von Flugzeugen kommt öfter vor, als wir das so vermuten. Die Vergiftungsgefahr fliegt offenbar permanent mit.
Das liegt an der Art und Weise, wie die meisten Flugzeuge konstruiert sind. Denn die Luft fürs Innere, die wird durch die Triebwerke angesaugt. Wenn da also Öle oder Gase dazwischen geraten, dann kann es kritisch werden. Nur wenige Flugzeugmodelle leiten die Luft über den Rumpf nach innen.
Bis heute gibt es keine wissenschaftliche Studie zu dieser ganzen Problematik mit der Luft und ja, kaum einer kennt das eigentliche Phänomen.
Wir vertrauen Technik, steigen ein und fühlen uns gut aufgehoben.
Das Flugzeug gilt als das sicherste Verkehrsmittel überhaupt.
Viele von uns fliegen regelmäßig, Piloten und die Crew täglich. Doch wie gefährlich ist dieser Arbeitsplatz wirklich? Wie gefährlich ist es, hier irgendwo zu sitzen und in den Urlaub zu fliegen? Ist das jetzt Panik oder eine alltägliche Gefahr?
Die Gefährlichkeit dieses gesamten Phänomens wird seit über 20 Jahren runtergespielt. Ich wage zu behaupten, das ist vergleichbar mit dem Skandal damals um Asbest oder auch das Holzschutzmittel Xylachlor. Auch da gab es erst eine Änderung, nachdem die Staatsanwaltschaft Untersuchungen aufgenommen hat.
Die Luft im Cockpit, die Luft in der Kabine kann verunreinigt sein. Das wissen Fachleute seit langem. Das passiert über die Turbinen, während Reste von Reinigungs- oder Enteisungsmitteln als harmlos gelten und auch beim jüngsten Unfall keine Rolle spielen dürften, sind sogenannte Öldämpfe, die ins Innere gelangen, nicht zu unterschätzen.
Es handelt sich um Öl, das verdampft und über die Klimaanlage in die Kabine kommt. Und im Öl befindet sich unter anderem neben krebserregenden Stoffen auch ein sehr potentes Nervengift, Tricresylphosphat. Und das führt eben genau zu solchen Vergiftungs- und Lähmungserscheinungen, wie es hier von den Piloten auch geschildert worden ist.
Das Problem: Die Kabinenluft wird bei Flugzeugen über das Triebwerk angesaugt. Sie ist heiß und sorgt abgemischt mit Frischluft für Wärme im Flieger. Tropft aber Öl in die Turbine oder ist eine Dichtung defekt, gelangen Ölrückstände mit der Luft ins Flugzeug. Atmet man diese ein, können Nervenschäden, Lähmungen oder Ohnmacht die Folge sein. Filter oder auch Sensoren im Cockpit wären eine Lösung. Überhaupt klingt es so, als seien die Schwachstellen im System bekannt, würden aber nicht gestopft. Nein, das sei so falsch, entgegnet die Luftverkehrswirtschaft.
Wir stehen zusammen auch mit unseren Pilotengewerkschaften gemeinsam in Gespräch mit der Herstellerindustrie, um mit der Industrie herauszubekommen, ob bei technischen Innovationen, bei technischen Verfahren, technischen Möglichkeiten hier Vorkehrungen getroffen werden können.
Bis in die 60er Jahre wurde Kabinen- und Triebwerksluft strikt getrennt. Danach nicht mehr. Nur Boeing macht das wieder bei seinem neuen Dreamliner mit Hilfe dieses Systems. Angeblich aber nicht aufgrund alter Schwachstellen, sondern einfach so. Besteht wohl möglich Angst vor Regressansprüchen? Dazu weicht der Verband heute aus.
Für unsere Industrie, für unsere Luftverkehrswirtschaft steht Sicherheit an oberster Stelle. Deswegen haben wir ein hohes Interesse, dass jeder Vorfall wirklich auch reportet wird und geprüft werden kann. Wir stehen hier in der Verantwortung, wir stehen in der Haftung und genau deswegen haben wir ein hohes Interesse an Transparenz und Aufklärung.
Das Thema hat Brisanz für Crews und Passagiere. Und einiges scheint da zu laufen hinter den Kulissen. Die Gewerkschaft der Piloten will ein wenig relativieren.
Es ist sicherlich ein ernstes Problem, man kann es nicht einfach vernachlässigen. Andererseits muss man schon bedenken, dass es extrem selten, dass solche Vorfälle in dieser Form auftreten.
Doch trotzdem, allein in Deutschland werden mehr als 60 solcher Zwischenfälle pro Jahr gemeldet. Schutz bietet dann nur die Sauerstoffmaske.
Im Netz dazu jede Menge Antworten auf jede Menge Fragen zum Gift in der Kabinenluft. Wie kommt es rein? Wie oft passiert's? Was macht's mit dem Körper? Aktuelle Stunde.de.
This is Mission Control Houston. The Expedition 33 crew members on board the International Space Station have been focused on a variety of scientific research this week, while also preparing for operations with a number of visiting vehicles. On Monday, flight engineer Aki Hoshide activated the re-entry breakup recorder and installed it in the automated transfer vehicle number 3 for its planned Tuesday undocking. That Reaper records data during the re-entry on temperature, acceleration, rotational rates, and other items, data that will be transmitted to the ground and studied to help design future spacecraft that would pose less of a hazard during re-entry. He then joined Commander Sonny Williams for some ATV undocking training before both of them went to work closing the hatches between the ATV and the station. Leak checks were conducted through the night tonight, looking ahead toward the undocking on Tuesday. Hoshide also worked with Commander Sonny Williams Monday and Thursday, training for next month's arrival of the Dragon spacecraft, a commercial cargo ship targeted for its first operational flight to the station in early October, launching October 7th and planning to arrive at the station October the 10th. the computer-based training of how they will use Canadarm2 to grapple the Dragon when it approaches the station and berth it to the Harmony node, just as was done during the first Dragon visit to the station during its demonstration flight in May. Tuesday's schedule centered around preparations for the undocking of the ATV. All of the crew had a shortened day since they would be up later than usual to monitor the ATV's undocking. Although during the day, Sunday Williams set up the ultrasound for the integrated cardiovascular experiment, in which an echocardiogram is conducted on the crew member before and after exercise. The scientists try to quantify the atrophy of the heart muscle that is associated with long-duration spaceflight. Hoshide assisted her on that experiment and spent part of the early part of that day exchanging samples in the NanoStep experiment, while their crewmate, flight engineer Yuri Malenchenko, took care of the routine maintenance in the Russian segment of the station. Williams also conducted 2 in-flight interviews with the Huffington Post and CBS Radio before all 3 crew members got a midday break. Tuesday's undocking attempt was aborted just a few minutes before the undocking took place, when the commands to open the hooks in the ATV did not go through. The error in that configuration was subsequently identified and resolved, but a second undocking effort was postponed due to planning for a possible debris avoidance maneuver. The ground teams in Houston had been tracking 2 items, a piece of Russian Cosmos satellite that was involved in a collision in 2009 and a piece of exploded Indian rocket body that had been on orbit since 2001, both of which were on course to pass too close to the station, one on Thursday morning and one on Friday morning. By midday Wednesday, Houston flight controllers had been instructed to begin planning for a debris avoidance maneuver, which would involve firing the thrusters on the ATV in order to change the station's orbit and avoid the debris. But additional tracking later in the day gave the teams confidence that neither of the objects presented a real concern for a conjunction anymore, and so the plans for the maneuver were canceled, and replanning for the ATV's undocking took precedence. On Thursday, Sunday Williams worked on human life sciences investigations, taking measurements for the VO2 max experiment, gauging an astronaut's maximum oxygen uptake on orbit, and the European Space Agency's Thermolab investigation, which looks at the changes in the body core temperature before, during, and after exercise to measure adaptation of the body to the microgravity environment. Yuri Malenchenko spent time on Thursday cleaning the ventilation system in the Zvezda module, and Aki Hoshide did maintenance with an air sampling equipment in Kibo and maintenance on the advanced resistive exercise device. On Friday, the crew members worked together in a routine drill to practice the emergency evacuation procedures. They also had time spent packing items that are scheduled to return to Earth next month on that Dragon cargo ship before getting another scheduled midday rest, again due to the change in schedule required to support the planned undocking of the European cargo ship, the Eduardo Amaldi. After time off duty over the weekend and an opportunity to talk to their families on the ground, next week the Expedition 33 crew will tackle more routine station maintenance, plus additional training for the upcoming robotic arm operations and more experiment work inside the Earth's biggest orbiting laboratory.
Good day from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where at this hour the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers is on duty, ready for a second attempt to work with their colleagues at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside Moscow, and with European Space Agency flight controllers at the Automated Transfer Vehicle Control Center in Toulouse, France, to undock the Eduardo Amaldi Automated Transfer Vehicle, the cargo ship that arrived at the International Space Station back on March 28th. An initial attempt back on Tuesday was unsuccessful. The attempt to undock Eduardo Amaldi was aborted just a few minutes before the scheduled opening of the hooks because of a problem with the proximity communications equipment, basically the computer in the Zvezda service module of the Russian segment of the International Space Station that talks to the computers on the automated transfer vehicle itself. As it turned out, Russian flight controllers psyched out that problem very quickly and identified that a spacecraft ID, basically an algorithm that is supposed to be loaded into the Zvezda control module computers, was containing the incorrect spacecraft ID. That problem has since been corrected. Earlier today, Russian flight controllers confirmed that the proper spacecraft ID was in fact located and loaded into the proximity communications equipment computer. A successful talkback was conducted between the Zvezda service module computers and the automated transfer vehicle computers. As a result, the command was given about 4.5 hours ago by Russian flight controllers to open up the hooks on the International Space Station side of the docking interface between the ATV, as it is known, and the aft port of the Zvezda service module, to which it has been linked since March 28th. We are expecting just about 5.5 minutes from now for the commands to be sent to electrically demerge the connection between the automated transfer vehicle and the aft port of the Zvezda service module. That will be followed about 5.5 minutes later by the command that will be sent from the Russian flight control team in Korolyov to begin the procedure to open the hooks holding the ATV on the ATV side of the docking interface between it and the Zvezda service module. We are expecting physical separation between the two vehicles to occur at 4:46 and 22 seconds p.m. Central Time this afternoon. About 1 minute after the physical separation occurs, basically springs on either side of the docking interface pushing off against one another to enable Eduardo Amaldi to break free of the aft port of the Zvezda service module. About 1 minute later, the ATV engines will fire for 5 minutes and 31 seconds to change the velocity of the cargo craft by 4 meters per second and create an opening rate that by next Tuesday will find the Eduardo Amaldi some 4,500 miles in front of the International Space Station for the first of 2 deorbit burns that will enable Eduardo Amaldi, as you see in this animated depiction, to begin the plunge back into the Earth's atmosphere, where its butterfly-like solar arrays will begin to break up, as will the rest of the ATV loaded with trash, to plummet harmlessly over the Pacific Ocean for its demise. The automated transfer vehicle, at the time it is undocked just a few minutes from now, will have spent 184 days docked to the aft port of the International Space Station's Russian segment. It has been used to reboost the station several times during its stay on orbit. It was launched on March 23rd from the Arianespace European Space Agency launch site at Kourou, French Guiana, atop an Ariane 5 launch vehicle, and 5 days later, again automatically docked to the aft port of the Zvezda service module to begin its stay on the International Space Station. So a belated departure on tap for the Eduardo Amaldi just a few minutes from now. Earlier today, the 3 crew members on board the International Space Station, Expedition 33 Commander Sonny Williams, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency flight engineer Aki Hoshide, and Russian veteran cosmonaut Yuri Malenchenko, who is at the controls of this laptop computer for the proximity communications equipment commanding on the Zvezda service module with the assistance of Hoshide this afternoon. This trio took about a 3-hour nap earlier this afternoon, woke up at mid-afternoon to begin preparations to bid farewell to the Eduardo Amaldi. The next automated transfer vehicle to be launched to the International Space Station will be called the Albert Einstein. It is scheduled to be launched next spring from Kourou, French Guiana, for its delivery mission to the International Space Station, as was the case with this flight of Eduardo Amaldi, delivering delivering about 7 tons of food and supplies and fuel for the residents on board the orbital laboratory.
Okay, so it's less than 10 minutes before the bus demerging. So we don't have TV image anymore. So we will stand by for your report.
Flight controllers at the ATV Control Center in Toulouse. You're seeing a live picture from that control center. That is different than the European Space Agency's Columbus Control Center that is located in Oberpfaffenhofen, just outside of Munich in Germany, that daily interfaces with the flight control team here in Houston to report on the operation of activities and experiments in the European module that's attached to the U.S. segment of the International Space Station. This ATV Control Center is employed strictly for the time frame that the automated transfer vehicle is en route and in orbit to the station. Its docked time frame with the station, and as of today, it's anticipated undocking from the station through its planned deorbit next Tuesday. Again, there'll be 2 deorbit burns next Tuesday to send the ATV plummeting back into the Earth's atmosphere, where it will burn up harmlessly over the Pacific Ocean. The only cargo craft that returns to Earth intact is the SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft. The next one of those scheduled to be launched on Sunday night, October 7th, a week from Sunday night, at 8:35 p.m. Eastern Time from Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station on its own delivery mission of science experiments in the first commercial resupply mission to the International Space Station following its successful demonstration flight back in May. Dragon, if it launches on the evening of October 7th from the Cape, will be grappled and berthed to the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station on Wednesday, October 10th. All quiet here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Again, the team of flight controllers on duty at this hour, led by Flight Director Jerry Jason, who is in the middle of the row of 3 that you see. To his left, at the bottom of the screen, is Flight Director Tony Sacacci, and to Jason's right is spacecraft communicator Jack Fisher, who will be talking, if required, to the space station crew throughout the course of today's undocking operations and the departure of Eduardo Amaldi from the vicinity of the International Space Station.
Please proceed to step number 7.
Laptop command test, okay. Copy.
The Russian and ATV control centers talking to one another, confirming that we have a demerging, as they call it, of the electrical bus between the automated transfer vehicle and the Zvezda service module, so everything proceeding on track for the sending of commands by the Russian flight control team to open up the hooks on the ATV side of the docking interface between it and the Zvezda service module. That command is expected about 4 minutes from now. It will take about 3 minutes for those hooks to fully open, after which the separation command will be issued, enabling springs on both sides of the docking interface to push off against one another and allowing Eduardo Amaldi to begin backing away from the aft port of Zvezda. The International Space Station and the automated transfer vehicle flying 255 statute miles above the Earth over the southeastern portion of the Black Sea, moving from southwest to northeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. We should be acquiring television from the International Space Station's Russian segment over Russian ground stations just a few minutes from now, as The station passes within range of a series of Russian ground stations that are stretched throughout Russia and the Asian continent. The International Space Station is about to be placed in free drift, all thrusters about to be disabled to prevent any perturbations imposed on the undocking sequence for the automated transfer vehicle. Once the ISS is confirmed to be in free drift, then Flight Director Jerry Jason here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room will give the ATV and Russian flight control teams a go for undocking.
Moscow station, Sudan mode is free drift.
And Jason has now given the go for undocking. That will be relayed up to Yuri Malenchenko aboard the Zvezda service module, again assisted at the Proximity Communications Equipment Computer Station by Aki Hoshide. Expedition 33 Commander Sonny Williams is busy with photographic and video documentation of this process. And as we stand by for the initiation of hooks opening about a minute and a half from now, we're beginning to receive, as you can see, television from a camera on the Eduardo Amaldi automated transfer vehicle of the docking target at the aft port of the Zvezda service module, to which Eduardo Amaldi will separate just about 4 minutes from now.
Yuri, Moscow. Moscow station, you call?
And the mechanical systems officer here in mission control confirms that the hooks are now driving open on the ATV side of the docking interface, so everything proceeding on schedule.
Copy.
We expect physical separation less than 3.5 minutes from now.
So please control PC and also laptop. The hooks of ATV, what color is this indication?
Procedure F8_3 prepared.
The International Space Station now flying over western Kazakhstan, just north of the launch site for Soyuz and Progress vehicles at the Baikonur Cosmodrome.
Is nominal. Say again. Oh, all the indicators are nominal. Now copy. Copy. Yes, correct. Please prepare the procedure. I've already reported that the procedure is ready.
Physical separation.
And physical separation confirmed a bit earlier than planned. No issue there. Undocking occurring at 4:44 p.m. Central Time as the International Space Station and the automated transfer vehicle flew 255 miles over western Kazakhstan.
Procedure F8_3 execute.
Go to wide angle, please. Done. Copy.
Eduardo Amaldi bidding arrivederci to the International Space Station after a stay of 184 days, 3 days behind schedule. But today everything has worked to perfection. as the automated transfer vehicle separates from the aft port of the Zvezda service module. This view from a camera on the aft port of the Zvezda service module looking back at Eduardo Amaldi. You can tell from the insect-like shape of the solar arrays on the cargo craft. Again, undocking occurring at 4:44 p.m. Central Time over western Kazakhstan.
Moscow station. MSU is in the mode ready.
Vehicle mode.
Vehicle mode is inaudible. Copy.
The International Space Station's thrusters have been re-enabled.
Copy.
The ATV now beginning its departure maneuver. Over the course of the next several days, the automated transfer vehicle will separate at an ever-increasing rate from the International Space Station to a
Vehicle mode separation. Copy.
To a distance ultimately of about 4,500 miles in front of the International Space Station for a series of deorbit burns next Tuesday afternoon that will enable the ATV to begin its plunge back into the Earth's atmosphere.
We are observing
We can see Sudan mode.
Sudan mode.
Vehicle mode SOX loop. Printer.
Copy.
And the visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control confirms through telemetry and through confirmation from the flight control team in Toulouse, France, that the departure maneuver burn of 5 minutes and 31 seconds in duration has begun. You can see, or you had a view and you see again, the automated transfer vehicle at the bottom of your screen, having undocked about 4 minutes ago from the aft port of the Zvezda service module. Loaded with some 7 tons of food, fuel, and supplies for the residents of the International Space Station. Eduardo Amaldi was launched on March 23rd from the European Space Agency's launch site at Kourou, French Guiana, atop an Ariane 5 rocket. A 5-day rendezvous ensued, with docking occurring automatically to the aft port of Zvezda back on March 28th. We are expecting to acquire downlink television from the U.S. segment of the International Space Station through our tracking and data relay satellite system just a few seconds from now. A very good view of the ATV from the camera on the aft port of the Zvezda service module as Eduardo Amaldi begins to fade away from view. We're hoping to get some downlink television from external cameras. And there now we have a view of the automated transfer vehicle as it backs away from the aft port. Prominent in the field of view on the left side of your screen is the ISS Progress 48 cargo craft that arrived at the International Space Station a couple of months ago to deliver supplies that is docked to the Piers docking compartment. There are also there is a Soyuz vehicle also attached to the International Space Station, which is the ticket home for Sonny Williams, Aki Hoshide, and Soyuz commander Yuri Malenchenko, who are scheduled to return to Earth on November 12th. A busy traffic pattern emerging, as always, at the International Space Station. Today's departure of the automated transfer vehicle. Soon to follow, a week from Sunday night, the scheduled launch of the SpaceX Dragon commercial resupply vehicle from Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station atop the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, which, if all goes as planned, will be grappled and berthed by Hoshide and Sonny Williams on October 10th and berthed to the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station. 2 weeks after that, the scheduled launch of the next trio of residents to the International Space Station that will join Expedition 33, that being Soyuz Commander Oleg Novitsky, Flight Engineer Evgeny Tarelkin, and NASA Flight Engineer Kevin Ford. And within days after they docked to the station on October 25th, just a few days later, the next launch of a Russian Progress resupply vehicle, the Progress 49 cargo ship from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Like a bird in flight, Eduardo Amaldi continues to separate from the International Space Station's Zvezda service module. In contrast to the aborted undocking that occurred back on Tuesday, everything went by the book today, with all of the commanding having been completed, and all of the timelined activities to prepare for the undocking of the automated transfer vehicle moving along in smooth fashion. The visiting vehicle officer now reports that the departure maneuver burn by the ATV has been completed on schedule. Everything looking good, as an opening rate of about 4 meters per second ensues to enable Eduardo Amaldi to depart the neighborhood of the International Space Station for several days of transit to a point some 4,500 statute miles in front of the station, where it will be next Tuesday for a pair of deorbit burns of its engines that will send Eduardo Amaldi into its final plunge back into the Earth's atmosphere and a reentry breakup over the Pacific Ocean. That breakup, by the way, will be documented by special recorders that will send back data in a very novel fashion so that flight controllers can understand better the characteristics of a vehicle's breakup into the Earth's atmosphere for spacecraft design of the future. As mentioned earlier, the next launch of a European Space Agency automated transfer vehicle is scheduled next spring in the April timeframe from Kourou, French Guiana. That will be the Albert Einstein spacecraft. the fourth in the series of automated transfer vehicles designed to bring the largest volume of supplies up to the International Space Station of any of the existing cargo craft. And now a very clear view of the automated transfer vehicle as the International Space Station and Eduardo Amaldi fly into an orbital sunrise over South Korea. Now moving from northwest to southeast at an altitude of some 255 miles above the Earth.
Юрий Иванович.
Yuri, go ahead.
Можно сделать заключительную операцию.
You have a go for closeout steps per radiogram 0341. Copy.
Юрий Иванович, просьба...
Yuri, we're actually asking you to stand by. Please do not perform closeout operations. Right now, copy. Copy all, standing by.
Speaking to Russian flight controllers on another loop, the flight director at the Automated Transfer Vehicles Control Center in Toulouse, France, reports that the ATV now has departed what is known as the approach ellipsoid. This is essentially a circular boundary that represents the vicinity or the neighborhood of the International Space Station, within which all proximity operations are conducted. So the ATV now flies at an ever-increasing velocity away from the International Space Station. Now passing to the south of Osaka, Japan. This is Mission Control Houston. A good view of the automated transfer vehicle as it passes ever further away from the orbital laboratory following its undocking at 4:44 p.m. Central Time today. Flying 255 miles over the western Pacific Ocean, moving from northwest to southeast. The automated transfer vehicle performed flawlessly today, as did all of the proximity communications equipment on the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The aft port of the complex is now open and free. That aft port to which Eduardo Amaldi had been attached for 184 days will next see the arrival of the next visiting vehicle that will attach to that aft port of Zvezda, that being the ISS 49 Progress cargo ship that is scheduled for launch on October 31st from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The Expedition 33 crew, Commander Sonny Williams of NASA, and flight engineers Aki Hoshide from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency and Yuri Malenchenko from the Russian Federal Space Agency will begin an 8.5-hour sleep period. About 4 hours from now, they'll wake up at about 5:30 Central Time on Saturday morning for a weekend of routine maintenance work and some off-duty time before they press back into a full complement of experiments and preparations and training, onboard training activities for the SpaceX Dragon arrival that is scheduled for October 10th, assuming a launch from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station on Sunday night, October 7th.
Copy, in work.
Russian flight controllers confirming that Malenchenko has deactivated the proximity communications equipment. It is no longer needed for this operation as Eduardo Amaldi continues to separate from the International Space Station. Again, this separation rate will continue throughout the course of the weekend, and Monday, next Tuesday, Eduardo Amaldi will find itself some 4,500 miles in front of the International Space Station, at which time a pair of deorbit firings of its main engines at 4:42 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday, and a second deorbit maneuver at 7:44 p.m. Central Time next Tuesday evening will enable Eduardo Amaldi to slow down enough to drop out of orbit for its high-speed reentry back into the Earth's atmosphere, where it will break up harmlessly over the Pacific Ocean.
Thank you for your great work and your great support today. Always appreciate it. Thank you, Yuri, and I wish you goodbye. Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye and thank you.
Russian flight controllers in the wee hours of Saturday morning Moscow time wishing a good evening and goodbye to Yuri Malenchenko as they go home for the evening. Their job done now.
We'll be standing by. Should you need us, call us. Sergey. Per radiogram 0373. We need to report to you on step 4. That is on condition of the rubber rings, so everything is fine, everything is intact. You will have it, the photos on the OCA machine, and the name of the file will be the same as the radiogram. So everything is good from this end. Okay, copy all. Thank you.
The Eduardo Amaldi activities from this point on through the weekend into its deorbit next Tuesday now solely in the hands of the flight control team at Toulouse, France, at the Automated Transfer Vehicle Control Center. Ballistics officers here in Mission Control in Houston will continue to monitor the departure of the Eduardo Amaldi through the time of its deorbit burn, as it does with every visiting vehicle until its job is complete.
Экипаж МКС ЦУПа Москвы в канале СГ-1 для Юрия.
ISS Moscow on SG-1 for Yuri.
Отвечаю.
Go ahead, this is ISS.
Юрий Иванович, в вашем лице
Yuri,
Тулузу также поздравляю.
MCC Toulouse is also congratulating you with a very successful undocking and wish you all the best as well. To the whole crew. And on behalf of the International Space Station crew, we would like to congratulate you all on the ground and thank you for your excellent work and great support today. Thank you.
Congratulations relayed to Yuri Malenchenko and his crewmates, Sonny Williams and Aki Hoshide, aboard the International Space Station from the Russian Flight Control Team, relaying the best wishes and congratulations from the Automated Transfer Vehicle Control Team and Toulouse, France, on a job well done. The second time was a charm today, as the first attempt on Tuesday ran into some technical glitch issues with computer commanding. Those issues quickly resolved. The new undocking date set by the station program management on Wednesday, and today everything went smooth as silk as the automated transfer vehicle, the Eduardo Amaldi, separated from the aft port of the Zvezda service module at 4:44 p.m. Central Time, 5:44 p.m. Eastern Time. Just a few minutes later, conducted an engine firing and a separation maneuver that will see Eduardo Amaldi move to a position about 4,500 miles in front of the International Space Station for a series of deorbit burns of its main engines on Tuesday, enabling the automated transfer vehicle to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere and break up harmlessly over the Pacific Ocean. With that, we're going to wrap up our coverage with one programming reminder as we watch the automated transfer vehicle fade from view. All of the activities of the Expedition 33 crew aboard the International Space Station will be recapitulated, and all of the new activities on tap for Monday will be brought into your view on Monday morning with our ISS Update Commentary Hour. which airs at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time on NASA television. Again, Eduardo Amaldi, free of the International Space Station, heading for its demise over the Pacific Ocean next Tuesday in a flawless operation today to enable Eduardo Amaldi, the automated transfer vehicle, to separate from the International Space Station. Until ISS update on Monday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we bid you a great weekend. This is Mission Control, Houston.
October 7th is the launch date for SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft on the first commercial resupply mission to the International Space Station. This will be the first of 12 contracted flights by SpaceX to resupply the space station under the Commercial Resupply Services contract, and will restore an American capability to transport cargo to and from the orbiting laboratory. Dragon will be sent aloft from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida by SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket. A backup launch opportunity is available on October 8th.
Hello, my name is Sanjeev Gupta and I'm a long-term planner for the Mars Curiosity rover. This is your Curiosity rover update. We've now been on Mars for almost 2 months and we've been witnessing the amazing new vistas of the never-before-seen Gale landscape taken with our wonderful cameras. However, much of the science team have had their eyes and the rover's eyes firmly focused on the ground. On the drive from the Bradbury landing site to our current location, we have been analysing 3 really interesting outcrops that we have called Goulbourn, Link and Hotter. If we look at the Hotter outcrop, we can see a distinct layer that has been tilted and eroded, and this allows us to look at the cross-section through the layer. When we looked at the layer with our high-resolution Mastcam camera, we found that it was comprised of sand grains and small pebbles that had become cemented to form a hard layer. Here, you can see a pebble that is 3 centimeters in diameter, so smaller than a ping pong ball. This suggests that this layer is an ancient gravel deposit. The surprising thing is that when we looked at the pebbles closely, we discovered that many of them were quite well rounded. This is very different to the many angular clasts that usually litter the Martian surface. Here, you can see a rounded pebble from a riverbed on Earth. On Earth, rounded pebbles are a common telltale sign of rocks that have been transported by water, for example in a river or a stream. As water flows over a riverbed, if the flow strength is great enough, the pebbles are lifted up into the flow or rolled along the riverbed and they become pounded and battered against each other, and this causes them to become rounded through time. So what we think we might be seeing here on Mars is an ancient riverbed with the pebble beds representing old stream deposits. The size of the pebbles tells us that these rocks could not have been transported by the wind, so it seems clear they must have been transported by water. So how did this pebble deposit get to be here? If we look more broadly in Gale Crater, we can see that there is a prominent feature that geologists call an alluvial fan. Alluvial fans are cone-shaped deposits of gravel and sand that accumulate where streams exit mountains. In Gale Crater, there is a 10-kilometer long fan formed at the mouth of a 30-meter deep canyon that is derived from the crater rim. On the fan itself, we can see evidence for multiple channels suggesting that the stream bed direction changed through time. When we look at the location of the Curiosity landing site with respect to the alluvial fan, we see that the rover landed downstream of the fan. The rounded pebbles likely represent long-distance transport down the alluvial fan. So this is really exciting news for the science team because it's the first time we are seeing gravel transported by water on the surface of Mars. This has been another exhilarating week for Curiosity on Mars and for the science team here in Pasadena. This has been your Curiosity rover report. Check back for more updates.
The next crew slated to live aboard the International Space Station continues to ready itself for the mission. Expedition 3334 Soyuz commander Oleg Novitsky of the Russian Federal Space Agency, NASA flight engineer Kevin Ford, and Russian flight engineer Evgeny Tarelkin took a break from training to field questions from the news media at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City, Russia. They also participated in traditional ceremonies in Moscow's Red Square. The trio will ride a Soyuz spacecraft to the ISS in mid-October, where they'll join Expedition 33 Commander Sonny Williams of NASA, flight engineer Aki Hoshide of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, and Russian flight engineer Yuri Malenchenko. Space Shuttle Endeavour is back on the ground following its removal from NASA 905. the shuttle carrier aircraft that transported Endeavour from Kennedy Space Center to Los Angeles International Airport. Following its demating from the modified 747, Endeavour was moved into a United Airlines hangar, where it will be prepped for its 2-day journey through the streets of Inglewood in Los Angeles to its new home at the California Science Center. Endeavour, the youngest of NASA's 5 space shuttles, was rolled out of the Palmdale, California assembly plant in April 1991 and flew the first of its 25 missions the next year. Astronomers compiled 10 years' worth of photographs taken by NASA's Hubble Space Telescope to make the Extreme Deep Field, or XDF, the deepest image ever taken of our universe. It builds on the work done in the 2003 timeframe when the Ultra Deep Field image revealed distant galaxies that offer clues into the earliest times of the universe. The XDF is a small patch of sky that reveals about 5,000 galaxies, but is only a fraction of the entire universe. It gives us a glimpse of galaxies about 450 million years after the Big Bang. The Goddard Space Flight Center recently took delivery of the first 2 of 18 beryllium primary mirror segments for NASA's James Webb Space Telescope. Ball Aerospace in Boulder, Colorado shipped the 2 mirrors in custom containers. The remaining 16 mirrors will likewise make their way from Boulder to Goddard over the next 12 months and will be integrated into the telescope in 2015. The Webb, NASA's next great observatory, is on track for launch in October 2018. This artist's illustration, based in part on data from NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory, indicates that our Milky Way galaxy is surrounded by an enormous halo of hot gas. Extending hundreds of thousands of light years, this hot gas halo has a mass comparable to that of all the stars in the Milky Way, and a temperature much hotter than previously believed. The illustration shows the halo in blue, along with the Milky Way and 2 neighboring galaxies, the Small and Large Magellanic Clouds.
And welcome to the Kennedy Space Center's 50th Anniversary Gala.
The Kennedy Space Center and the National Space Club Florida Committee marked KSC's 50th anniversary with a gala in the visitor complex's Apollo Saturn V Center. With celebrating the past and preparing for the future as their theme, some 650 current and former NASA employees, dignitaries, and guests noted Kennedy's achievements of the last 5 decades while discussing the center's next chapter as a hub of commercial spaceflight.
The Kennedy Space Center is synonymous with humankind's greatest achievements in exploration of the universe. Kennedy and its adjacent Cape Canaveral sites were the launch pads for Alan Shepard's first flight, John Glenn's first orbit of Earth, and Neil Armstrong's first small step.
Throughout those 50 years, there's been one common theme, and that's an insatiable desire to explore, to send humans and robotic spacecraft beyond the confines of our home planet.
Sputnik 1, the first artificial Earth satellite, was launched into an elliptical low Earth orbit by the Soviet Union 55 years ago on October 4, 1957. The surprise launch precipitated the American Sputnik crisis, began the space age, and triggered the space race, a part of the larger Cold War. Sputnik was also scientifically valuable. The density of the upper atmosphere could be deduced from its drag on the orbit, and its radio signals, monitored by amateur radio operators worldwide, gave information about the ionosphere. After about 37 million miles and 3 months in orbit, Sputnik 1 fell back to Earth and burned up in the atmosphere on January 4, 1958.
I have liftoff, clock is started.
50 years ago, on October 3, 1962, NASA astronaut Wally Schirra orbited the Earth 6 times in the Sigma 7 spacecraft. The Mercury Atlas 8 mission was the 5th United States manned space mission. The 9-hour flight focused mainly on technical evaluation and was the longest U.S. manned orbital flight to date in the space race. The flight confirmed the Mercury spacecraft's durability ahead of Gordon Cooper's one-day Mercury Atlas 9 mission the next year. And that's This Week at NASA. For more on these and other stories, or to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media, log on to www.nasa.gov.